To all the participants, and very good morning to our beloved Vice Chancellor Sir, Register Sir, Director of Research, Heads of the Department, Research Supervisors, our staff and research scholars. Today is the second session. I think yesterday we had a very good brainstorming session, and today we'll also have 4 lectures today. One by none other than our Vice Chancellor, Professor Damodar Garu. We have 4 sessions today, and the first session will be starting with Professor Damodar Sir. I now request Srilata Madam to give a brief introduction of our Vice Chancellor. Over to you, Srilata Madam. Srilata Ma'am.
Meanwhile, the research scholars, the participants can introduce themselves, saying, I am so-and-so from department.
Last time we had a...
No.
Only, a long time.
No, in the chart box,
Okay.
They will be mentioning their name and
sir.
the department, so that that gives us an idea about their attendance, when they joined and when they have left the session.
So please give your names and your department in the chat box. Meanwhile, I'll be just calling up Srilata.
Yeah, in the chat box only. They can say, I am so-and-so from so-and-so department.
Yes, sir.
That shows their attendance.
Yes, sir.
It's a Sunday and they are busy with...
Srilata Madam, we are waiting for you. Just unmute yourself. Unmute.
Okay, Madam, is it audible?
Yes.
Okay, Madam. Good morning, one and all. I would like to introduce today's first speaker, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir, Professor G. Damodar, Sir. He has 42 years of teaching and research experience in English of different levels in CKM College, Kakatiya and Shatavahana universities, and now in Chaitanya deemed to be university since February 13, 2020. Professor Damodar obtained MA, MPhil, PhD from Kakatiya University, postgraduate certificate course in teaching English, and postgraduate diploma in teaching English from English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. He has, to his credit, 54 books written and edited, 74 papers published, presented, and contributed, 60 general articles, 550 haikus, 120 radio and video lessons on English. He has successfully guided 28 MPhil and PhD scholars, and 3 more PhD scholars are still with him at our university. He has completed 3 UGC major and minor research projects. He has given 26 seminars and conducted 23 workshops. He has attended and presented papers at 28 national and 15 international conferences. He has delivered 38 invited talks and lectures. His next plenary session is at VIT Vellore on November 14, 2020. He has 15 years of administrative experience in different positions at university level. He has visited 21 countries including Sweden, USA, Singapore, and Italy on academic assignments. He has been a member of 21 academic bodies and associations. He was conferred with State Best Teacher Award in 2010, the President Excellence Award, English Forum Award, Telugu Tejam Award, Potanna Award, and President of India's nominee for Dr. G.H. Central University, Sagar, Madhya Pradesh, during 2015 to 18. 2 fest scripts have been published in his honor by leading Delhi publishers. Currently, he is the first Vice Chancellor of Chaitanya deemed to be University, Warangal. He wants to be the change he expects from others. He preaches what he practices. He is self-reliant, does not depend on anyone, though he is orthopedically challenged. He drives his own car, types out his articles with just one finger, and devises several latest teaching aids by updating his knowledge even now like a student. Though his date of birth certificate declares that he is 63, he thinks he is 21 years young with 42 years of active teaching and learning experience. He wishes to guide people, preferably school children like Dr. Abdul Kalam, till his last breath. May God fulfill his wishes and may his tribe increase. Jai Gurudev. Thank you, sir. Now I invite Dr. Professor Damodar, sir, to deliver his speech.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Srilata madam. That was a real befitting honor to our Vice Chancellor. As you have already said, the challenge. He always faces challenges, accepts challenges, and always, I think, he's in the forefront. We should be behind him. We always think, oh, sir is doing it, so we have to do it. So thank you, sir, for guiding us in all the ways. So over to you, sir. You can share your screen and you can start your lecture. I request all the participants to mute themselves.
I thank you both, Professor Anuradha and Dr. B. Srilata, for their nice words about me. Dr. Srilata also presented one topic related to all our research scholars, ethics in research, right, Srilata?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So maybe in the next research orientation program, we may ask you to cover that topic, ethics in research.
Definitely, sir. Thank you, sir.
So as the Vice Chancellor of the University, I have to make some opening remarks. With the patronage of our Honorable Chancellor, Sir, OSD, and our co-chairpersons, we are conducting this orientation program for 2 days. As some of you are aware, our Chaitanya deemed to be university has become a pioneer and a trendsetter in online descriptive mode examination. 10 webinars we have conducted so far, Yukti sessions, upgradation of knowledge through interaction sessions, and quiz programs almost daily, covering all the courses that our university offers. We have started producing video lessons which are made available online for the benefit of all. Chaitanya University is the first in our state and third in the country to conduct all UG and PG exams and announce the results in a record time to enable our students to go ahead in their careers. With these brief introductory remarks, I extend a warm welcome to today's eminent speakers. Dr. Tapasya Srivatsava from University of Delhi South Campus, which I have visited several times to meet my good friend Professor M. Rajan. Today's another speaker, Dr. P. Mukesh, committed scientist at Central Drug Research Institute, Lucknow, and our proud alumnus. Today's fourth speaker, our professor, head of the Department of Chemistry, Professor S. Kavita. Professor Anuradha is right when she says that we had a fruitful session yesterday with Professor B.K. Talma, Professor M.V. Rajan, and Professor M. Ravinder, our active registrar. I think our director has made their PPTs available for all of you. At the end of my session also, I will make my material and my PPT available to all of you. Let me also take this opportunity to applaud and appreciate the efforts of our dynamic director of research programs, Professor T. Christopher, my senior colleague at Karti University and now at Chaitanya Deontological University, for organizing this excellent ROP for 2 days. Now I'll be sharing my screen. I think host has to enable me to share my screen.
Arvind, just allow sir to...
Arvind, is Arvind our host?
Arvind is the host.
So now you can share your screen.
Yeah, I really appreciate sincere efforts of Arvind. You know, he has been a silent and sincere teacher.
So you can share your screen, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay, I'll do that. Host disabled participant screen sharing. How is that I am unable to... Arvind?
Sir.
Check once again. Host. Now I am getting this message. Host disabled, participant screen. Achha, meanwhile, all the participants, I think they have already in the
Sir.
chat box.
Now you can share your screen, sir.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Can you see?
Yes, sir.
Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, it is visible, sir.
Right. So I was talking about the principles of good writing, and before we go further, we have asked you to introduce yourself, saying I am so and so. I am Sirisha from English. I joined this ROP yesterday at what time and left this at what time. So when we take a printout of your chat box, we will have a clear attendance also. And today also you can mention the same thing. I am Karnasi or I am Narsaya from English. I joined ROP today at so-and-so time and left at so-and-so time. So something related to my topic that I covered yesterday, and I want to recapitulate and test your memory power. What do the readers expect from a good article? Just to share some of your thoughts in the chat box. We are writing articles, and when we write articles, what do we think of? Do we think of the readers, or do we think of ourselves, or do we think of our research activities? So what are the qualities of a good article? What do you think that a good article should consist of? Please think of, listening to me, think of this question and give your response in the chat box. Since I had one more day, I was going through some material available on good writing. So as research scholars, of course, we can depend on internet sources. But when I was thinking of I didn't have time to even consult websites. So when I browsed typing good writing, I could find these three folders which are very useful for all of us. Now Richard Walker in his PDF file which runs into 27 pages talks of 5 elements. He talks of purpose, audience, clarity, unity and coherence. I'll be sharing that material. I don't want to repeat what they have said, and you will at the end of my session I will share that materials with you. You can read it leisurely. It runs into 27 pages. Writers Write website, covers the 10 principles of effective writing: brevity, clarity, communication, emphasis, honesty, passion, reading, revision, simplicity, and rhythm. Rhythm, of course, rhythm is needed when we present without taking several gaps. Lawrence Graham talks of 20 principles of good writing in 7 pages. I'll be sharing this material with you. You can go through this material. Yesterday I said that a good article has a beginning, a middle and end. It should sustain the reader's interest. And if readers are not interested, they won't read our articles. A good article is a really highly personalized document. It depends upon your interests. It can be subjective. In literature, if somebody wants my response to a poem, it is subjective. But in science, most of your articles are objective. There is less scope for your choices. So, but still in some articles, personal touches make it special. But if you cover several facts and figures, that they can be explained in an interesting way. We can broadly categorize all articles, into 2 broad categories: creative articles and non-creative articles. And creative articles use words connotatively, and non-creative, scientific, objective articles use words denotatively. In my material, I I explained the difference between denotation and connotation. If you use the words with their direct meaning, that becomes denotation. But if you cover all possible meanings of a particular word, that becomes connotation. Different levels of meaning. Every word has several meanings. Even a simple word like power has several meanings. There was power cut yesterday, and I could not complete my presentation. But now I had to depend on smartphone. And we even talk of physical power, mental power, spiritual power. Even the simple word power has several connotations. I'll be sharing my material on this also, how the simple word dead can be used in 40 ways that I have covered in my study material. And I have selected almost 38 words which are used connotatively, and all those things will be very useful for you and for your students and also for your children. I'll be sharing that folder also with all of you. Um, and but all good articles have these three important things: content, style, and structure. Content is important and it should be credible and authentic. I will also take you to my latest article. If I include it in my general writing, that will be my 61st article. If I include in my research category, that will be my 75th article. So how I have covered content, I will show you whether it is authentic or credible, you can decide. And what is my style, you will have some idea about it, whether it is formal style or informal style. So since it is an article on national education policy, I used formal style. Structure, what structure I have followed, that also I will show you. Yeah, before I take you further, uh, let me show you that article also. Uh, See, first UGC asked our university to submit a report on the implementation of national education policy in our university. And they asked me to submit uh, my response in 1,500 words. They have specified it also. Then I use the title NEP. NEP stands for National Education Policy. It's a new wave education policy. Uh, then at the beginning I said, see, this is how I have begun. We at Chaitanya Deemed to be University strongly believe that some of the path-breaking reforms of national education policy will bring about a paradigm shift by equipping our students and teachers with the right competence and capabilities, and also create an enabling and invigorated educational ecosystem for a vibrant new India. This is my opening sentence. And then in the second pair, I made a reference to our webinar on national education policy. See the facts and figures I am submitting with authentic detail. See, I have even covered the flyer, the slide that we have prepared, and I commented on this is how we have to be authentic and credible in our information. So, how Professor Vishweshwar Rao from Vikram Singh, university covered his points, what Professor Lingamurthy covered, our former Vice Chancellor, and third speaker, Dr. Kalyan Chakravarti, what they have covered. I have given the gist also. Then, how we are implementing, to what extent our university is implementing this national education policy, that also I have explained. So these are the themes. And I have also made a reference to all the important activities that come under our university's social responsibility. How our university has donated 7.20 lakhs to the Prime Minister National Relief Fund, and how we have distributed 9,000 bottles of sanitizer worth 4 lakh rupees made in our laboratories and distributed to the public. And I have given a link even to our distribution on YouTube. This is another authentic reference. So like this, I have covered everything with some references, implementation of NP in the syllabus, how we have revised the syllabus, and our MBA university offers a paper on creativity, and engineering colleges innovation club, and all these things I have referred. How our MSc students, stay in villages for 1 week, because now they talk of community engagement, national education policy. And I made a reference to our online courses, and I have given my conclusion. See, conclusion. Though it is a response, see the structure that I have followed in 1560 words.
It is invisible, sir. Screen is
Yeah,
there. Excuse me,
yeah,
sir.
it's
Please.
invisible. I have to, yeah, if I do it like this, but anyhow, I'll be sharing this also to
Okay,
all of
thank
you.
you.
Okay, I'll be sharing. Okay, now I think this is visible, right? Uh, see the structure. It
PowerPoint here,
has,
it is there, sir.
It is
yeah,
invisible.
PowerPoint is visible, that's all.
yeah. So it has important introduction, and I have highlighted the important salient features of this national education policy. In the present ICT era, where learning, research, and innovation are pivotal, this new policy will transform India into a vibrant knowledge hub, contemporary, skill-oriented syllabi with LOCF, 4-year degree program with multiple flexible entry and exit options, holistic, multidisciplinary education. And I have to submit a full-length article again in 2,500 words. Look at the structure, look at the content, style and structure of my paper, the full-length paper. NEP, again I said, just I'll highlight it. I'll make it 20 so that it will be clear. So again, I used a different title for a vibrant India, abstract, because this is a full-length article. As all of you know, that our article should begin with an abstract, and abstract sums up all the important features of the article at a glance. And these things I made a reference to them, and then I have given keywords. So in my article, I talked about national education policy, gross enrollment area, GDP, how much they want to invest in education sector, information communication technology, academic bank of credit, single regulator. So some regulated bodies will be reduced. And NRF, any digital education, MOOC, SWAYAM, categories of universities, they want to categorize all universities into 3: research-oriented, teaching-oriented, teaching and research-oriented, 3 language formula, liberal education, common test, STEM. So these are the keywords. And then look at my beginning. I created interest by making a reference to uh, a cartoon published in Enadu, Telugu daily newspaper. I have to say Telugu daily newspaper because in the UGC in New Delhi, they will be reading this. If I say Enadu, they may not know that, oh, this is Telugu daily newspaper. Okay, this is covered on so-and-so date. See the authentic details, credible details that we have to mention. Depicting a child flying with the wings of new education policy shows how this new national education policy is going to add wings to the present generation. It's really gratifying to learn that the long-awaited NEP was finally. See, uh, national education policy I used in brackets. I'll be using this NEP acronym frequently. Was finally approved by the cabinet on so-and-so date, headed by so-and-so. I have given all these too. it needs a lot of preparation. You have to collect, I have been collecting this material since July 29th. To write one article, it takes at least 1 month. To write one book, it takes 6 months. At the end, I will be showing the cover pages of my two books. Um, if I don't collect all these facts, all of a sudden UGC asks us to do something. Then if I'm not ready with the facts and figures, I may not give all these details, right? Um, it examines on, see how many things I have mentioned here. Thus, their response. Even I have covered the response of President of India, Vice President response, then Education Minister response, Education Ramesh Pokhriyal, then Education Secretary response, and then Vice Chancellor of FLU response, Professor Suresh Kumar, Professor Appa Rao's response, Professor Vishweshwar Rao's, Professor Lingamurthy, and our Chancellor's response also I have covered. Our Chancellor Sir welcomes the extensive use of ICT in teaching, research and evaluation. It's good to know that the accreditation norms will change hereafter. At present, 80% degree colleges run in temporary rented accommodation, but we are proud to have our permanent excellent accommodation. This is what is opinion. And then I talked about gross enrollment area, a single regulator, National Education Technology Forum, 3 types of universities, common tests, budget for education, because I was making a reference to this budget in GDP. So our university expects 60% of GDP to be spent on education sector. Then only we will have excellent. I visited Delhi government schools. When you are in Delhi, you must visit. Delhi government allocates 26% funds to education. Even our Telangana state should do that. And it has transformed its fate, making it on par with the global education scenario. The schools that I visited in London and in America are like the schools that I find in Delhi now. 10, I'm making a reference to Indian Institutes of Liberal Arts, and then National Research Foundation. So with the 20,000 crores, they are going to have this. And in the conclusion, again, I summed up stating it is expected that with the implementation of NEP 2020 in toto, because it should be implemented in toto. I don't know whether state governments will allow it to implement it in toto. If NEP implemented in our state, we will not have intermediate education. I don't know whether these powerful intermediate colleges permit the state government to do away with intermediate education. So if it is implemented in toto, we will definitely increase the quality of education in both professional and non-professional areas, enhance the knowledge and skills of the students to grab employment opportunities all over India and abroad to meet the global challenges. The main motto of education for all, that is the main motto of NEP, will also be visualized. Chaitanya Team to University Warangal is already implementing some of the initiatives recommended by NEP. So then I made a reference to major sources. My primary source is UGC National Education Policy document. This was released on July 29. That's my primary source. And the secondary sources, Eenadu Telugu Daily newspaper, front page, accessed. So whenever you make a reference to web source, you have to mention the date, because they keep on changing. And when you go back and search, you may not find it there. So accessed on July 31st. Then I attended conclave on transformational reforms in higher education under NP via video link in August, and again in Governor's Conference on September 20th. I noted down points. So I'm referring to those things. I consulted one article published in Telangana Today. And I have contributed a full-length article again in 3,000 words to EduTracks. That article also I can show you. So then at the end I said Damodar is the first one who didn't know it was for him. So this is the structure. I think you have a clear idea about the structure, content, and style. Is it clear? Right. Now, so writing, see, we are all born with some cognitive skills, but writing skill has to be cultivated. I cultivated my writing skill by maintaining digital diaries. You may not believe, I have been writing diaries since 1969. I can show you my 10th class diary also, full scale page, right? That has improved my writing ability in Telugu, Hindi, and English. So now I maintain digital diary. I go on covering the points or the ideas that I get. It is really convenient. Even in a moving bus or car, you can record your ideas and thoughts. Um, then what was my first principle? It is about single subject, and it should be direct and interesting. So it should show your great heart. I was not criticizing national education policy. I have certain personal views, but as the vice chancellor of deemed university, I'm not supposed to be anti-government. Uh, my personal opinion also I have expressed. That also I will show you. Um, the fourth principle, ideas should be arranged in a skillful manner. I have just shown you how I have arranged. If you go to my paragraphs, they will refer to only that particular content. And my paragraphs begin with a topic sentence. The topic sentence sums up the content of that particular pair. Um, each paragraph deals with a single idea, with a topic sentence, and at the end of the paragraph, you should create the impression that it is complete. Inner harmony, and you should not deviate from the main point. So if you read that article, you will not find my personality there, right? Because that is on national education policy. But if you want to read my travelogue of the countries that I have visited, that will be subjective. You will find my views on the things that I saw in all those countries. So whether it is subjective or objective depends upon the topic that you are dealing with. So it should be written in a good style. You have to think of every sentence. See, depending upon the content of the paper, you have to use appropriate style. I think if you go through my article, you will not be confused. I am not confused, and I don't want to confuse the readers. Whoever reads in the UGC in New Delhi will have a clear idea. Oh, so Chaitanya Deemed University has already started introducing our several initiatives of our national education policy. Great, they will be happy to learn these things. Then there, I think when I was talking about this, power went out, right? So director, are you there? So,
Yes,
yeah, 12th principle, the composition should be conventional, should use conventional and acceptable spellings and grammar. Sometimes some of my scholars ask whether they should use British spelling or American spelling. Now both are accepted. If your article is on American topic, for example, my MPhil thesis was on Indian writing in English. So I used British spelling. My PhD thesis was on American fiction. So I used American spelling. Then when I was started writing, to test your memory power, I think in introduction somewhere I mentioned that I registered soon after my MA, I registered for my MPhil in so-and-so year. I registered for my PhD in so-and-so year, I mentioned. Does anyone remember? When did I register for my PhD program? In 1981. So when I registered, where I used to go to this American Studies Center in Hyderabad. They have excellent library facilities. So then I started collecting the differences between British spelling and American spelling. And I have prepared the book on that also. I'll be sharing that later. Maybe in the next uh, orientation program, I may explain all these differences between British and American spelling differences, vocabulary differences, grammar differences, usage difference. But for time being, let me say, say when you are referring to color, even if you use CLOUR, it is accepted. You are saying center, even if you use American spelling TR, it is accepted. Practice, see, Americans use practice the same spelling as a verb and noun, but in British spelling, we use AC for verb. I practice ACD typing with one finger. So realize AC British spelling, ZD American spelling. Again, Americans don't say Z, they say Z. It's ZTV, not ZTV. For Americans, it is Z. Z means ZD. So for dialogue, British English ends in OGUE, but Americans stop with G. Program, G. These days in our university correspondence, we use only program, PhD program. We are using single M. Uh, Cancelled double L, British English, but single L in American English. Look at this cartoon. I don't know whether it is visible. Anyhow, I'll be sharing this with you. There are several cliches that most of you use when you present or when you write. The first important cliche that I find, discuss about. My goodness, please remember this transitive verb discuss doesn't take the preposition about. So now I am discussing 14 principles of good writing. See, I have not said about. Please, after attending, this session and some other session, there should be some improvement in your language also. So please don't use about. When you use discussion, if you are fond of about, then use it as a noun. We had a thorough discussion on national education policy. So if you use as a noun, then you have to use on or about. But if you use as a verb, no about. We discuss. The next speaker discusses some topic. Third speaker discusses academic writing. Fourth speaker discusses some topic related to chemistry. See, in all these sentences, I have used only discuss, not discuss about, discuss about. Then another cliche that I find, mistake, one of the best thing. You are fond of using one of, but one of is always followed by. Today, I am one of the speakers, not speaker. There are four speakers today. I am one of the speakers. This is one of the principles. So once you use one of, please use noun in plural, right? You are one of the research scholars. Chaitanya is one of the 127 deemed universities. One of the deemed universities, not university, universities. And another third cliche, concerned section, concerned teacher, concerned lab, concerned, my goodness. If you say concerned, you are using as an adjective. Concerned teacher means worried teacher. So what is the correct way? Please meet the teacher concerned. It means please meet the teacher who is concerned. When you come to our campus on research issue, please you meet the director concerned. If you have some problem with the chemistry, meet the head concerned, not concerned head, right? So then again, fourth cliche that most of us use in our writing, cope up with. Sir, I can't cope up with this PhD research. You know, I have family obligations, I have job, this and that. Arey Baba, all of us have all these things, right? We have to do all these things. So you have to cope with this work, cope with, not up with, not to double prepositions. You have to cope with the work as I cope with a lot of work. So then you are attending this in order to improve your knowledge of research, okay, in order to improve, okay, but with a view to improve, again, misuse, many misuse this, with a view to improve. After with a view to, you cannot use plain verb, you have to say improving, you have to use gerund. You are attending this refresher course with a view to improving your knowledge of research. Okay, so I'm going to share another file in the 20 principles. He talks about uh, in 20 principles of good writing. Lawrence is covering some other cliches and other things. Okay, you will learn those things there. Right, it's already. I have to conclude. I'll conclude in 5 minutes. Okay. Um, So this is 13th one. It should you should use good quotations, good idioms, and good phrases. After submitting I'm going to use this good quotation in my complete article in 3,000 words. So look at my good quotation: technology-oriented education. Now we have moved from textbook-oriented education to technology-oriented education, and it is making us correct computers. But transformation-oriented education only makes us creative composers. This is my own quotation. So technology-oriented education makes us correct computers, but transformation-oriented one makes us creative composers. And the national education policy wants to have this transformation-oriented education to make us all creative. So I'm going to use this. You see, when I do meditation, when I am in pranayama, when I do other things, whenever I get time, I think of my proverbs and quotations. I'm writing this article, what quotation I can use. Like this, I think of. So it should be uh, in your mind all the time. So finally, your composition should be interesting, informative, satisfying, right? So there are certain do's and don'ts. There are, yeah, let me make a reference to, anyhow, there are 11 things that you have to do and you should avoid. All of us have this problem when we write articles. We make history generalizations. This can't be done, sir. This is hopeless, sir. This is waste, sir. I think that's waste. If you say this can't be done, this is waste, it's waste generalization. When you start writing an article, I am expecting your use on COVID-19 and your use on NEP. That is also one of the tasks that I am giving you now. So if you say government has failed in controlling COVID-19, it becomes a hasty generalization. First you prove, give some facts and figures, then you say. Lakhs of people will perish hereafter due to corona, sir. This is also a hasty prediction, right? I will never get corona even if I don't follow SMS. Becomes a dogmatic statement. Um, either or statement, we have problem with either or statements. We can either use medicines as food or take food as medicine is an example of either or reasoning. You can't be either this or that. Take a stand. Yesterday I came across this professor. Please mute your microphone. Background disturbance. Yeah, today is Sunday and everybody wants to have special lunch. Okay, Professor Veera Reddy, former Vice Chancellor of Shatavana University, sent me this and immediately I made a note of it. So he says, Singapore Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew said, there were two options for me. Either I get corrupted and put my family in the Forbes list of the richest people in the world and leave my people with nothing, or I serve my country, my people, and let my country be in the list of the best 10 economies in the world. I choose the second option. See the honesty of Singapore Prime Minister. That's why that country is developing fast. Some Indian politicians said, after listening to this, there were two options for us too, but the second option was already taken by the Singapore Prime Minister. We had no other choice. That speaks of. So I want to conclude this in a poetic way. You can read and enjoy it later. And this is the cover page of my 55th book that will be released maybe next fortnight. This is meant for the students of Shatwan University textbook. And I'm going to edit 3 books, one for first year, second book for second year, and third book for third year. And it takes at least 6 months to complete one book. And our university will be launching, our Chancellor Sir will be launching this book. This will be my 56th book, maybe 55th book. And it took 3 months for me to translate 67 poems written by our beloved Prime Minister Modi, right? And daily I translated, one day I translated 1 poem, one day 2 poems. We have 24 hours in a day, right? If you sleep for 8 hours, we have again 16 hours. And if we chat for 1 hour, we have 12 hours a day, I tell you. If you utilize your time, you can complete all these research scholars can complete their dissertations within 3 years. Right, with this, I think now this is my task. Please, number 1, I said you have already introduced in the chat box. Number 2, you have expressed your views, what readers expect from our research scholars. And my third task for you, express your views on national education policy or COVID-19 in 1,500 words. Email them to me at, this is my email ID, vc@cdu.ac.in for my feedback. I tell you, once I go through your article, you will be benefited a lot. You will avoid all the mistakes that you make in writing English sentences. Okay, so I once again congratulate our dynamic director, research programs, and our very resourceful Dean, Faculty of Science, Professor Anuradha, for organizing this in an excellent way. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, sir. It was indeed a very good paper, or I should say a lecture, Principles of Good Writing. And so we have here, sir has rightly pointed out the elements of good writing, and he also said, I think I like the sentence that it is a highly personalized document. So this is what is the take-home message for me today. And he has also discussed about the principles of good writing. Thank you very much, sir. In the end, I can just quote a quotation that there is no such thing as good writing, only good rewriting.
Yes, good rewriting.
This is
you have
what
to revise
is,
several times.
yes.
I revised several times, the presentation also I revised maybe 6 or 7 times. We must have that patience. When we revise, we'll get several ideas. As Vice Chancellor, I can depend on my typist. I've seen several Vice Chancellors depending on somebody for their articles also.
Yes,
but see, when you start writing and typing, you can change at every level. You can do a lot of work. If I depend on typist, I can't do any work. I request all the research scholars to use their smartphones to type their notes also. Don't depend on anyone. If you depend on somebody, your research gets delayed.
Thank you, sir. Now we have Tapasya madam taking up the next lecture. I request Srilata ma'am to introduce madam.
Okay, madam. So now it's my pleasure. Is it audible, madam?
Yes.
Oh, okay. It's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Dr. Tapasya Srivatsava, Assistant Professor, Department of Genetics, University of Delhi South Campus. She completed her MSc Biochemistry from Hamdard University, New Delhi, PhD from All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. She received Indo-US Science and Technology Fellowship 2011 for conducting research work in University of Minnesota. Young Scientist Fellowship Award, Senior Research Fellowship awarded by Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, Junior Research Fellowship by Lady Tata Memorial Trust, Mumbai. And she also got SARB Women's Excellence in Science Research Award 2013 with grant in aid. INSA Young Scientist Medal Award for Medical Sciences. Young Investigator Award in 2007 by Association of Clinical Biochemists of India. She has more than 30 publications and 12 book chapters. She is an elected member of National Academy of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, member of Institutional Ethics Committee of University of Delhi South Campus. She is also a member of Institutional Committee of Stem Cell Research, National Institute of Immunology, New Delhi, member of Institute of Ethics Committee of CCRH Ayush. She received several research grants from reputed institutes like SERB, DBT, and ICMR. She successfully guided 3 doctoral theses and 2 MPhil dissertations, and she is still now she is working on 3 PhD theses. She has delivered 7 invited talks and lectures at several national and international conferences. Ma'am, really, you are multi-talented. We bow you. You are a living example. You are really true inspiration to all our research scholars. I invite you to deliver your lecture.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you can share your screen also.
Okay, thank you very much. So good morning to all. I'm going to stop my video if that's all right, and I'll share my screen. Oh, just a second. Just hold on a second. So is this fine for everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, excellent. So thank you very much for this invitation, and it's always nice to address young scholars as they start out, and thank you for this wonderful introduction. Yes, it's been a while. It's been 10 years since I joined the South Campus, and yeah, I'm progressing and learning as I go along. So it's wonderful to share some of my thoughts with the research scholars here for a topic which I think is extremely important, and not just for the individual who's conducting the research, but also the institution as well as society in general. So I hope I'm able to communicate some of the key points here. Ethics is a very, very vast subject. So I may be missing out on some details. So if anybody needs anything more, I'll be happy to answer queries through email, which can be sent to me. And I thank Professor Christopher for the invitation, and I hope you students can write to him or if you can communicate my email, and you can come back with questions too. So I think one of the important things to know here is that you can no longer feign ignorance and say that I was unaware at the time of conducting my research, or at the time of writing my paper, or at the time that I was dealing with human subjects or animal subjects. And I thought that it wasn't important to take care of something. You see, in this world of technology, and as I was just hearing some part of Professor Damodar's lecture, there is so much information which is available. That information is there for you to grab with both hands and try and learn as much. And technology has made it easy for us to be able to do that. And therefore, you can no longer say that I have no idea on what is happening around the world, or what's happening in the country, or what the policies are, because everything is available for everyone to read. Okay, so that's the reason why I think people across the country are holding such important refreshers, orientation, and research work on research methodology, so that you're able to do justice to your future research work. So if you look at some of the ethical principles, again, this is a very vast subject, and I'm going to refrain from going into too much of details, because I think you can read them later, and what is more important is how you apply them. Ethics in its philosophy. So I understand that this audience has people not just from scientific science background, but also various others like management, etc. So the basic guiding ethical principles remain the same for all. And I would just like to point out here that in ancient India, at least the Charak Samhita and the Sushruta Samhita had the philosophy clearly laid out right from the beginning on how medical ethics should be done, okay, and how your environmental ethics and sustainability should be taken care of. Uh, in fact, in ancient India, you had some clear guidelines on how biomedical work, or there was no research per se, but how surgeries should be performed, how medicine should be given out, and so on. Similarly, you have the Egyptian Code of Hammurabi, which gave the principle for eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. And this again was problematic because it revealed a lack of justice among different classes, where the eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth was not seen to be applicable for all. Um, Now, what we currently looking at, and we are following a lot, is the Western philosophy of ethics, where there are two important theories which people have sort of, which has precipitated down to some two important theories, and which have many parts to it. Again, I'm trying to concise a very vast subject, and I would just want to point out on two of these, which is deontological and consequentialism theory. The deontological, which eventually says, okay, this is the right thing to do, and everything is correctly laid out, rules are properly given. Okay. However, if you have a consequence attached to it, that if I do this, what is the consequence of that work that I'm doing, or that research that I'm conducting, then the consequentialism theories come into play, because not everything could be addressed in a rule book. There are many things which are specific for different places, different occasions, which you may not have rules correctly laid out for. In that case, what do you do? So, right, this is, the theory part of it. And as far as the research goes, so I'm not going to dwell on these for too long, but I will go into the basic ethical principles and the underlining message, which is that, so is the screen completely visible, or is there portions which are hidden?
Oh, madam, it's visible. It's
Oh,
visible.
excellent. So if you look at the overarching principle is that whatever research work that you do, okay, and this understanding, I believe all of you research scholars should have right from the beginning. Please do not think that you are um, a third person in this. It's not just the principal investigator or your supervisor's responsibility. So there is nowhere to run and there is nowhere to hide. And you have to own the research that you do. It could be in any field. And the value and the benefit of that research has to be correctly assessed by you, because these are completely linked, indelibly linked with the integrity in how you are conducting the research. And ethics is all about having an integrity for conducting that research. Okay, so for especially when you're starting out, afresh, this should be a key principle by which you spend the next 3 to 5 years or so on in your research work. The core guiding principles of ethics are very well known, and there are many reports and many books. Some say there are 5 principles, some say 8 principles and 7 principles, and so on. There could be many one of them written in many different ways, but largely they look at the concepts. Let's look at the concept instead of going by what is said and what is not said. So the concept is that of beneficence. That means it should be benefiting to the society in general, or the person who's involved, or the subject participant. And there should be non-maleficence. That means that it should not do any harm. There has to be autonomy with the person who's participating in your research work. That means if the person wants to back out, you should let that person back out. There should be justice in what you do. That means there should be no discrimination between different races, creeds, caste, religion, or anything else. And there has to be an equality amongst all participants. And they should not be chosen to only represent certain things. So I can also tell you a counter thing on this. For example, you may say, what if the work is supposed to be done in a specific region? Yes, it may have to be done in a specific region, but no way should your conduct actually point out to any discrimination on that basis. So that is extremely important. There has to be fidelity in how you are doing research work. You owe it to your participants. You owe confidentiality. You owe that you are able to correctly disseminate information, tell them about the research work in a correct manner. So these become the core guiding principles of ethics, no matter what research work you're doing, whether it is life sciences or business ethics or anything else. You have to be very honest towards your research. I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these sentences here, because it's important to understand what is meant by honesty in research. Now, you know that when you're conducting research, you are collecting data, you are doing bench work, you are trying to bring it all together. So it's very important that how you um, collect that data, there is an honesty involved in the collection of the data. There is honesty involved in how you're recording it. And there should be honesty in how you're analyzing it. So you have to be honest towards the research that you do. You should be able to think about it and determine what are the key aspects of your research work which need your ethical guidance. Like I said, you have to own your research work, make it your own. You have to determine accountability for your research work, which means that who are you ultimately accountable to? Are you accountable to the PI? Are you accountable to your lab mates, to your research group, to your institution, to the society? So you should have very clear a viewpoint on where your research work is going to benefit and who you think you are most accountable to. It's always possible that your PIs will say that you are most accountable to us. Yes, that is true. You are working in labs and you're working with PIs, so there is some amount of accountability, but there is also a bigger accountability towards society, and towards maybe the funding agency, the institution. So you have to determine your accountability very correctly and be aware of it. Okay, it cannot be to one person. Your accountability cannot just be to yourself. It cannot be, oh, I'm my only master, and I have convinced myself, so I'm fine with this. It cannot be like that. The third point is of extending professional courtesy, which means that in your research work, you would be meeting a lot of people. You would be with subject participants, with other collaborators, and somewhere you have to make sure that you take everybody along, right? You have to make sure that you are acknowledging the right people at the right time. You have to make sure that you are extending all the information that you have to all of the ones who are involved with that research work, which includes subject participants to a certain extent, especially when you talk about informed consent. When informed consent is something which is taken from people when they are being inducted into the research by the participants. Then you have to maintain a good stewardship of research, which means don't think that you're, I'm just a person who's starting out in this lab or with this research. Who am I? Like I'm very small and I don't have a role to play. There is nothing that I am doing which will affect. I'm just a small fry. No, you are very much a stewardship of the research work that you're doing. You are guiding your research work and the future research based on that in your lab. So definitely you have a stake in that. And therefore, when you are driving research work and taking along the people with you, you may be training a lot of lab students. So your ethics has to be correctly maintained to be able to mentor and teach other people too. You have to learn to treat everyone with fairness, and this is a very broad term, but it encompasses, and I will talk about it later in scientific conduct also. But having the basic humanity in place is extremely important. Let's not forget that you have to be able to, if you're dealing with human subjects, have some compassion towards them. Make sure that you're treating everyone equally. Okay. And so as we move on, we'll elaborate on this a little more. Now, I would end up talking a lot more about the science part of it, but at least some of the non-science people, I have picked up some examples where you could look at potential ethical issues. Now, what is meant by ethical issues? And I would want you to understand that these are guidelines. Everything in ethics are guidelines. They are invoking something within you, which could be a moral stance or it could be a written guideline, but telling you to do the right thing. And sometimes you can have conflicts and coming up in this. So for example, as an example, if you look at Amazon reviews, if you ever go to Amazon reviews, they write over there, if you give good reviews, we will transfer some money on the Paytm to you. So this basically is like a bribe. These are definitely potential issues which should be addressed in Amazon. Now, of course, these are based on reviews and individual people who are selling, the sellers, individual sellers, but Amazon is hosting them. And therefore, at some point of time, Amazon should be looking into it and saying that, this is not a great business ethics that we are following. Second is, if you read about cases as what happens in Walmart. So if you know how Walmart functions, what Walmart does is Walmart goes and establishes a very big unit in some local area. And then what it does is it drops its prices really, really low. It decreases the prices so much that the local sellers around there are no longer able to compete and they have to shut shop. And then once that happens, Walmart will go ahead and increase the prices. So these are not good business ethics at all, but Walmart is still functional. So this is what I want to point out, that a lot of these are guidelines, and if somebody is not following them, there is only that much which can be done. Now, if there is money laundering and there is fraud, then there are legal aspects to it. But for a lot of these other things, these are guidelines which you need to abide by. And so if Walmart is following bad business ethics, to be honest, nothing has actually been done about it. So there is something lacking in how business ethics are framed if they are not able to correct such cases. There's another case of a company called as Theranos. And recently, what it did was it took billions of dollars from venture capitalists to invest on a product that didn't exist. So here they could actually catch these people. It was a product in terms of detection of some disease through a blood-based diagnostic system. And so here they could catch them because this was outright a fraud, and money was involved, and you could actually catch the people here. So there are some cases in medical sciences which have actually changed how we do research, and I would draw your attention to that. And while we are discussing these cases, some important concepts will come up. So the Tuskegee syphilis trial actually went on from 1932 to 1972, which is 40 years in the US. And somewhere what people found was that it violated some basic ethical principles, because all of the people who were taken up were Americans, Black Americans at that time, Afro-Americans who were so who were the only participants. And the justice was denied because not only were African Americans recruited, but they were not given the drug which was available. They were not told what the study was about, and nobody knew whether what they were getting was a placebo or a drug, which is fine. That's how you conduct this such research, but nobody got it. And what they did instead was they just followed that if somebody suffered from syphilis, they followed for 40 years to see what happens as an outcome. Now, in this case, in around 1997, Clinton actually made an apology finally after 40 years for those 40 years of the US government having conducted this research misconduct. Similarly, there were cases in Guatemala where inoculation studies, that means sexually transmitted diseases, were injected in men and women who were sex workers and prisoners in the Guatemala prison area. And they conducted research work on them, and it was completely unethical. And it violated so many principles of bioethics. After a lot changed, and the Belmont report came out, and some declarations and guideline principles were laid. So these were two very, very big cases in medical science which changed how we now conduct our research. Sometimes it's difficult to retrospectively make an assessment. For example, Alfred Nobel, when he invented the dynamite, really, he did not know at some point of time what it would be used for. Similarly, there were drugs which were used as pesticides, but were sprayed on as exfoliants in Vietnam during the World War II. And similarly, Agent Orange is another such gas which has been used to really kill people, especially during the Vietnam. So your intent, you may have a lot of things at hand, but your intent has to be correct, and that determines on your principles in ethics. So here's one example, which is now you can see this happening. So there was a time when people were being awarded Nobel Prize for making sturdy plastics. And look at where we are now. We are looking at plastic-free innovations, such as using oyster mushrooms and different forms of fungi to be able to make plastic which is biodegradable. So it makes us question, of course, retrospectively, at that point of time, the intention of the Nobel laureates mentioned here was not wrong. But over a period of time, we have realized that, that was not such a great innovation. Maybe it could have been avoided completely. So the overarching goals remain honesty, integrity, respect for humans, respect for animals, and basically the pursuit of truth. So when you go out and do your research work, remember the basic reason why you have come into this line. You are not into this line for making accolades, for collecting awards. It is for the pursuit of truth, and that should always be your guiding principle. Okay. There are some recent examples of ethic violations. And here is a recent, it's not that recent, but in 1998, there was a vaccine study which was published by Andrew Wakefield, who said that there was a connection between autism and measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, which was given. And this actually led to a lot of people not giving vaccines to their kids, and that has led to an increase in the number of measles and mumps cases across Europe. And when later investigated, it was found that there was complete falsification of data. They did not have the data to support any such research finding that they propagated. So this is devastating for from the public health point of view. And so therefore I say, so imagine if this is a research lab of Andrew Wakefield, he will have many number of people working with him. So as a PI, of course, he's very responsible, but so are everybody else who are in that study. If at any one point of time, anybody would have called out and said, look, sir, I cannot do this work because this doesn't seem the correct way to do, that would have been wonderful. So, but if it did not happen, and if you are just a mute spectator in your research, then tomorrow you are as accountable and liable for the outcome of that research work. There was also a case in the Regional Cancer Center in Thiruvananthapuram where a lady who basically had performed some research work in the US had come back with a drug and had not taken any approval whatsoever from any of the committees present in the Regional Cancer Center and administered those drugs to patients. And those drugs had previously not even been tried on animal. I hope you know that when you're working with drugs, it has to go through many phases of clinical trials. It had not even been tried on animals, and there was no proper consent taken from the people who were administered. People were not told about the drug. So informed consent is a very important part of how you work with human subjects. And so this is one case from India. There are multiple cases of fraud. So these are very interesting, and you should look at it just to understand what are the things that one should do and should not do. So here is Dr. Moon, who was a medicinal plant researcher at South Korea. And apparently for many years, he had been reviewing his own papers. So he would put in fake email IDs, and maybe some of them were real officials, and the papers always came back to him, and then he went ahead and reviewed his own papers and gave them excellent marks, and he just simply recommended himself. And he was called out and found out. See, now times have changed, and in the last 15 years or so, people have really been trying hard to catch such cases. So literally when I say there's nowhere to run and nowhere to hide, it's true. And things are out in the open, people discuss it. It's no longer a closet publishing of paper and sitting in one small lab cooped up, and and that's it. So journals had to retract. So this was a complete case of fraud in this case. There are cases of fabrication of data. So this was something which came up by Professor Spiegelman, who's a cancer biologist at Harvard. And once he was reviewing a paper and he found that, he didn't recognize anybody of the authors on the article, but he thought that the data was very familiar. And it turns out he was actually looking at his own findings. So somebody had copied the data while he was presenting at some meeting, and he had gone ahead and put them up as a paper of his own, and bad luck for that person that it ended up coming to Professor Spiegelman himself and he could identify it. And so this again is basically fabrication of data. So there are some clear-cut rules which define what is fabrication, and I will come to that. So here's another example of fabrication. And so in this case, Professor Wong Hoo-suk was found that he had conducted a series of experiments in stem cell research. And he was actually considered to be a pioneering expert on that. But it was found that most of his research was completely fake. And he was actually charged and he was suspended and he actually got a prison sentence. So South Korean government really clamped down hard on him in 2006 and it could have been sort of just let go, but it was good on the part of the government to have clamped down on them. There is a case from Columbia University where for Benhu Sezen, what he did was almost the entire body of work that Dr. Sezin had done was complete falsification. He had created, fabricated, as well as falsified the entire data that had been published for many, many years. So there's another case which is extremely interesting, and I thought I should share it with you. So all of you people know that there were times that, candy and carbohydrates was being widely regarded as a good source of energy. And people said fats are bad, ghee is bad, a lot of other different, of course, there are some fats which are bad, but not all fats are bad. And carbohydrate was touted as being better than fat. And I would just like to draw your attention here to some cases in 1960s, what people have found out now, and you will not find this very often spoken about. So that is how the publishing industry works, and how that is how big universities and very respectable universities do. They sort of suppress the information, the bad parts that are coming out from the university. So this was the case of Harvard University, and it was found that in 1960s and 70s, a lot of professors had taken money from the sugar and the candy industry at that point of time, and had reported data which suggested that carbohydrates are not that bad and fats are much worse. Now, I would like to remind you that an entire drug industry has developed after that. You have taken statins for taking care of heart issues. Candy companies, just sugar companies, have sold like candy to the brim. There are so many chocolates and everything all around. None of them are called as bad for health. Nowhere is there a small clause written that carbohydrates are bad for health. It's only now that we know that carbohydrates are extremely bad for health, especially for chronic diseases like diabetes and cancer and so on. And it was found that these researchers had conflict of interest because they were being funded by these candy companies and sugar companies. So this was a case which has got some attention, but not as much as I would like, and probably because it's Harvard. There are bad scientific conducts which are very obvious. For example, this Ke Kian Kui, he announced that he had created the first gene-edited baby and used CRISPR to create clones and babies, and not clones, sorry, just the gene-edited babies. And this was completely called as an illegal medical practice. And in fact, after this, a lot of laws have been laid down also on how gene editing can be used. Gene editing cannot be used without proper ethical approvals. And we definitely are not allowed to use them on human participants as of now in India. And a recent development which I would like to point out is this Lancet paper, right, which had halted the global trials of hydroxychloroquine. And it was found that the lead author, when confronted, could no longer vouch for the data's accuracy. And the journal editor of Lancet, in fact, he resigned, and he said that he was very taken aback, and he resigned from at that point of time from the Lancet paper editorship. So, you can have a lot of data duplication along with, I know that there are the next two lectures which are going to talk about plagiarism and scientific writing and how best to be. So I will not go into the details of that. But all I wanted to say is that you have a substantial amount of inappropriately duplicated images which are present in many research papers. And what I just want to say is that you have to be very careful when how you're putting together your work. So here is an India stats on it, which has found that about 982 papers have been retracted so far from India, of the 18,000 papers which are studied. And there are some more details here which I'm going to skip for the lack of time. But what I want to point out is that you have to be able to identify FFP, which is falsification, fabrication, and plagiarism, and have to somehow report it. And the interesting part is that such people are called as whistleblowers, if they go about and tell that, you know, that person or that lab or this lab is doing misconduct. And it's a very difficult stance and a very difficult position to take. But what is to be remembered, and I will share this paper with you, I'll share it with Dr. Christopher to share with all of you, is that a person who actually did this and pursued it for 14 years says that a person has an obligation to do the right thing if they can, right? So never forget your own principles. And therefore that should also reflect on everything, because it's really not worth it. It's a lot of your name, fame, your PIs which are involved, peer group, your future career, the society in general, the future research work which is going to be based on your research work. And so falsifying data and using and doing research misconduct is just not worth it. Here is a picture of this lady called Elizabeth Bick, who has recently, basically, she was a scientist and then she left her job. And now she basically looks at research misconduct. And she has published this paper on in molecular and cellular biology, where she has analyzed 960 papers. And she scrutinizes them in a wonderful way. I would just want to show you at this point of time on my screen. Just 1 second. So I hope you can still see my screen.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, excellent. So this is the report, and I want to show what Elizabeth, this is where I took it from, what Elizabeth Bick does. And it's very interesting. So she even puts up these small games, you know. So if you can look at this data, maybe some of you can give it a try. And can you spot duplications? This is how she gets her data, right? If you're publishing data, you'll get data like this. It's a tough thing to do. If you want to figure out whether there are portions of something having been duplicated. And so you can take you know, a few seconds to see. I don't have the time to sort of wait. So I'll show you here that you will see that has been duplicated in various ways in this composite image. So obviously the author had put together a data, then cut, copy, paste many of the smaller parts, done some fairly good editing job, but not good enough for Elizabeth Bick, and done these massive falsification of data, and you could even call it fabrication, because new data has been created, right? So this is one example. It's very interesting on how she functions, and she has in this article, she has more of it. And so if you look at these Western blot images, and if you were asked to locate, so what would you consider, for example? Okay, so I think the important thing to remember is that when you're communicating your data, what you have done should be properly communicated. If you have used your controls in two different Western blots, and you've used the same control picture, then try and place this on top of the other one, okay? Or try and at least in the written portion below in the legends, clearly mention what you want to say, okay, and reveal everything. So this is what she found when she analyzed. She thought that these two images were just the same with some modifications on the Adobe Photoshop maybe, and this are identical, which with when you actually look at it, this is an enlarged form of this one and lightened up a bit. So now you have tools and people who are really keeping a watch out on all of this. So I think it's important to understand that you know that what you're up against, and that itself should be a deterrent to you know, or deterrent. I don't want to put a negative connotation to it. So maybe that should be a positive way of looking at how you should be true to your data. Okay. So if you have to prepare for yourself for conducting research, what do you do? So this I've just put down on my own. It is, you know, basically because nobody can really teach you this. We can tell you philosophies of ethics and give a lot of paperwork on that and a lot of research articles. But really, when you're sitting down, I think it's important to be aware of all aspects of your research and all stakeholders who are involved in that research work. You need to be well versed with the various regulatory authorities in your institution. Go ahead and find out what all regulatory authorities are present in your institution. For anybody who's conducting research, it's critical that all of these regulatory authorities are in place. Then the third point I think is critical because you have to train yourself well. So imagine if you're working with some radio labeled products, and you don't know how to work with them, but you just go ahead and pick them up anyway, leave them wherever or do whatever. You're working with some patient samples, blood from a patient sample, and you don't know how to handle the biological material properly, and you're splashing it around, or you're discarding it in a wrong way, or storing it in a wrong way. So a basic conduct would be to make sure that you are very well trained. You learn all aspects of how to mindfully handle the biological research products, as well as so take care of your lab members also alongside. You don't want to harm anybody while doing your research. Then you should read about policy changes and related documents off and on. While I think this is more of a PI's job, but it would be nice to be aware of it. I mean, there is enough time to read and do literature survey and so on, and make this also a part of it. I kind of like this second last one, basically because social media is a very happening place. A lot of you people spend a lot of time on social media now. So why don't you follow some of these academic charter groups and academic groups where a lot of these things are discussed? So you will be very aware of it. You shouldn't be caught off guard. Ki mujhe to pata hi nahi. I mean, I have no idea that this is happening. I don't even know that something like this could happen, or this is something I should be taking care of. So best is to surround yourself in various ways with awareness. Okay. When you're reading papers, read them with a critical eye. It's not just about admiring, okay, here's a paper, and I'm going to just love every aspect of it. This methodology is so good, I'm just going to follow it. No. Read many papers, read them critically, compare them, come up with your research methodology which is best suited for your work. Okay, so this is important. As a practical aspect, this is the take-home slide, I think, in how you should be working in the lab. And if you want to be a responsible researcher, again, like I said, not just biological material, but also instruments and equipments. You have to be able to take care of them, maintain them, dispose things properly, and be aware of their usage. Also, because you don't want to be using them for the wrong thing. And then suppose you're using an instrument, or you're using a centrifuge, which is not even going to function like an ultra centrifuge, but you say, okay, I won't use an ultra centrifuge, let me just use this instrument because I have it, and then let me conclude whatever I get out of it. So how can you conclude whether you have RNA or DNA settled at the bottom of the tube if you haven't even used the correct instrument to be able to obtain it? Then you will end up saying, giving a false negative and saying that we could not obtain a DNA or an RNA from this, right? So you have to be aware of the equipments that you're using and their capabilities. Learn statistical methods. I think it's important. And also, while you're learning statistical methods, be mindful that it is not about, okay, here is my hypothesis. Now I have to somehow, I'm sure Professor Thelma yesterday would have given an excellent account of hypothesis and all. So just to add on to that, and that you have to be able to use the correct methodology, not a method which gives you a desired result. And statistical methods, statistics is a bit like what people say that, if you abuse it enough, it'll say whatever it has to. So you pick up this, you pick up that. So you try you use this T test, F test, so on. But there has to be a method in what you're doing. It cannot be a random process. So be careful about the statistical methods you're doing. Ultimately, you have to be critical about your own work. Don't think of it like my work, and oh my God, if I have a false result, or if I have a negative result, this is so bad for my career. This is so, no, it is not like that. You are think of yourself as a third person conducting the work. You just have to be able to pursue the truth. This is why you entered into this line anyway, in the pursuit of truth. So do it. And so be critical about your own work. Be your own best critique. Don't wait for the publication, for the research reviewer to be critical. Don't wait for your peer to be critical. You be critical yourself. Own it. Own your data. You have to spend substantial time in designing your study. I think this is important because it takes a while to get to it. People enter into research and they immediately start working, or they immediately start working on the bench. But remember that you have to give sufficient thought to your study. And this is extremely important also because you would need to determine the benefits to all stakeholders which are present. So you have to have a compassionate and a rational viewpoint while conducting your studies for everybody around you. What do I mean by that? I mean also your peers, your lab members. Come on, everybody is in the same boat. Don't compete with your lab members and say, I'll put that person down and they are also struggling. They are also like you. They are also in our situation where we are still learners. So you have to be compassionate with everybody. If you are ever conflicted, it has helped me to question this from myself. And so I would like to share that with you. What were my goals when I started out with this study? Who am I ultimately competing with? So every time you have, you are facing some conflict and you think, whether it's the right thing to do or not, answer these set of questions. Are you compromising any of the basic ethical principles that we spoke about integrity, about pursuit of truth, non-maleficence, beneficence? Whom are you accountable to? So ultimately, if something is being demanded from you, who are you accountable to? Can you justify it? Is it justifiable? What are the repercussions of your actions to the best of your knowledge? See, again, you cannot estimate everything and you're not effectively thinking of everything, but to the best of your knowledge, you must. So you have to think about your research and various aspects of your research. Please slow down at some point of time. Spend one day only thinking about your research topic, the people around it, its value, its worth. And I'm not saying you have to definitely do translational research and so on. This is not about that. This is about you truly understanding the value of your research, whatever it may be. Okay. Especially when you're working with human participants, you have to take care of, these are specific guidelines given by ICMR. So I suggest that you go to the ICMR guidelines for biomedical research, and there are also guidelines for stem cell research, and be very clear in following each one of them, because at any point of time, if you do not do that, then it may lead to your research basically going waste and you becoming infamous. I'm sure you people want to be famous and not infamous. So, okay, so I think some of it is something that you will learn, but a lot of it comes from just having a basic understanding that, look, so my work is on cancer biology, okay? I have to think about the cancer patients. I cannot be thinking about my research work as being above the cancer patients. So their well-being has to be foremost on my mind. If I'm going and collecting samples, I should not be going and poking my needle into cancer patients who are already, being poked with many needles and and they are very thin. So I have to make sure that when I collect my sample, it is collected along with the routine sample. You understand what I mean? So these things are a very human way of approaching research when you're working with human participants. A lot of it cannot really be taught. You may not find this written anywhere. Okay, it's just about having your own mindset of understanding that ultimately you are working for people, and those participants in the study are very important to you and they trust you. So you cannot let them down. and you have to be able to work in a very correct way. You, of course, you have to take out that blood because you are working, that is a part of your protocols. But how you do it and whether you are able to keep their well-being foremost will determine whether you are a good researcher or not. Okay. Definitely working with informed consent is important, and maintaining confidentiality is extremely important. You have to maintain a good laboratory and research notebooks. Okay. So I don't know how many of you are at which stage of research work, but record every day's experiments. And the reason why I'm saying this is that laboratory notebooks are often like a semi-legal document. You will be making a copy of it and leaving it with your PI, and you'll carry a copy with you. Okay. So you will benefit greatly, and your PI will benefit greatly if you record your data very well, right? I'm assuming that all of you are going to be doing very ethical and well conducted research work. And therefore, if you've done that, you want to be able to maintain a good notebook where you can refer back to. In fact, a lot of journals are now contemplating whether raw data and research notebooks and research notes should also be given along with the other data. So this is a very real and a very practical thing, which I think is, from tomorrow, you should be putting your date there, putting the time, writing that entire experiment that you're going to do before you do it, putting your observation clearly, and making sure that everything is recorded. This is also helpful for the future students who come into the lab, because they can refer and they don't make the same mistakes again. Okay, suppose you have here, by mistakes I mean in the course of research you have made you have corrected back and said, okay, I should not have put this, but I should have put this reagent, and then you have evolved from there. So a new person who comes, especially for the PI, why should the PI spend a lot of time and effort for the same thing over and over again? For a few things, they will do it. For example, they will make sure that you learn from scratch, DNA extraction, RNA extraction. But suppose there are some gross errors which should not be done, and it's a very complex experiment, and you have reagents which are very limiting, there is not enough money to work with, then it becomes crucial that your research notebooks are absolutely maintained in perfect order so that the PI can utilize them well. If you're working with animals, the institutional ethics committees for animals are there. And again, the CPCA has guidelines which has been given. Menka Gandhi, I think, is still heading it, and where guidelines to work on animals are given. See, animals are mute, and they are not able to express their sufferings. So your effort has to be to minimize those suffering. And I think that can be done by using a few good ways. One is having a robust study design. So you make sure that your study design has everything, including how you will euthanize the animal, at what stage of suffering will you actually relieve him and euthanize it, euthanize the animal, at what stage will you continue with your research work. That should be clearly laid out. You have to make it worthwhile. They don't do an experiment with just 4 animals if you are not able to utilize that data into anything. You may have to increase the number of animals, but at least that animal's life has not gone waste. So you have to make sure your study design and your methodologies are very robust and they are fruitful. Okay. And definitely follow all the rules which are laid out in the CPC SEA guidelines. Again, I can share those guidelines with you people and you can read those. Here is an important concept which is very difficult. This is identifying conflict of interest. I gave you an example of that for the sugar industry and the candy company, which were funding research on carbohydrates and fats. And so that was a clear-cut conflict of interest. Those professors should not have taken any funding. So it is a bit like, so I work on lung cancer. Okay, sorry to cut this off. I work on lung cancer, and suppose I take my funding from a tobacco company, and then when I'm reporting that, I'm going to be in deep trouble. I'm not saying that I'll always I've done something wrong. I may be doing very good research work and conducting it in a very proper way. But just the fact that I have conflict of interest with my financial um, aid is going to be a problem in publishing and taking this work forward. So therefore, you have to somehow identify any conflict of interest with collaborators, with funding agencies, and you have to try to remove it. Now, this would be done extensively, so I'm not going to go into the details. But remember, uh, of course, there is about plagiarism, that's there. But what is also important is to not exaggerate your work. I mean, come on. I mean, are you really saying that you know the ultimate truth about everything that you have done or everything that you can think of in the future? No. For all you know, you have not come across and read a particular important paper which could have absolutely counteracted your view. Therefore, when you're doing this scientific writing, an ethical way, I'm only talking in terms of the ethics here, ethical scientific writing should involve leaving sufficient room of doubt so that the next person who reads it doesn't take your word for just for more than what it is meant. So report your results correctly, okay, acknowledge inputs from others, but don't over exaggerate your research outcome. A good scientific conduct in a lab has many aspects of it which are extremely crucial. I know I've exceeded time, so Dr. Christopher, is it all right if I just take like 5-10 minutes more, or
You can take another 5 minutes, ma'am. No problem.
Okay, thank you. So a good scientific conduct in a lab, all of you people, these are some very critical things that you need to remember as you start out. You have to learn to share your resources, especially with your lab mates, with your peers, and a lot of publishers also, publications demand that it should actually be available to the community. Remember, now there are citation scores which are used and not just impact factors. So if somebody else is also working in the same field and taking your research work forward, it's a good thing and you would greatly benefit from it. And you must learn to share your authorship. So I just want to give one example here from my own experience. When I was doing my PhD, I had a master's student who was assisting me, and she had helped in isolating DNA from tissue samples for about maybe 10-15 tissue samples. So she was doing her master's, so this was very early time during my PhD, and so she left, and we sort of lost touch. And by the time I finished writing my thesis, 4 or 5 years had passed down, and when I was writing the paper, as luck would have it, and because of maintaining a good research notebook, I had her note paper stuck there on the job that she had done. And I, at that point of time, so this is not just for, I'm not just saying because I'm saying I'm great or something, but it just happened. Many things fell together. I could see that paper. I immediately recalled her that no, this girl had helped me in this. I approached the PI, and I said that, look, I would like to put her name in this paper. And my PI was also very supportive and nice and said, oh, if you think so, Tapasya, then definitely it should go in. And I included her name in that paper. Now, how that can be beneficial is that for somehow she, after finishing her MSc, she did not have a very good PhD stint. It can happen. You can, things, life does not go perfectly. So she did not have a good PhD stint and she did not have a paper out of a PhD. And this paper, in which she was the second author, was the only paper she had which helped her get a postdoctorate fellowship and move ahead in her career. So never think of your involvement in your research work, in your lab, in making decisions in the lab as small. Sometimes they may prove to be beneficial. It did me no harm. I was the first author. There is no glory in being the only author. In fact, these days people are insisting on collaborative work. So make sure that you have you share your authorship correctly, you acknowledge people, you have a good peer review system in place, you are open about your science and you communicate your science. Definitely be gender neutral, because as women in science, we know that it's been a long struggle. You know, you guys are young, take it on you to make sure that you are able to balance a lot of these very difficult social constructs, but do it anyway, okay? And make sure you train other students well. So mentoring is a very important part of it, and pass on the knowledge that you gain, right? You have to also strive to carry out social responsibility through science communication. I am on Twitter and I often use that platform, but not always, but often use that platform for communicating science. Also for, you know, pinging other people, reading their thoughts and so on. And so your work definitely has to be non-discriminatory, and you have to be very sensitive to different the diverse group of people that we have, especially in this country. So finally, I think this would be the last thing, is that I think I've already spoken about this in the previous one, so I will skip it, but make sure that you mind your FFPs, which is fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism of the data. This is critical. And some of the ground rules that will help you, I think, come to the second one is to be able to distinguish between your personal and professional relation. Okay, make sure you do that. You don't want to be caught up in this conflict, and do unethical work. Then you have to learn to say no. Here you aren't a politician, you're an academician. If there is something happening which you think you should not do, or you think that which you should not be doing, learn to say no. And definitely think of short and long-term consequences of your work. And find mentors. I think it's very important. I have been extremely lucky to have had good mentors during my entire research career and until now. So there is no end to this. And your mentor is not just your PI. It could be anybody you learn from, somebody who you can look up to and can guide you. And so go ahead and find good mentors, okay? And so these are finally the committees which are actually responsible for the research work you do, and you are answerable to them. So if you're working on human samples, you have to go to institutional ethics committee and follow the guidelines. The institutional animal ethics committee for animal work. There is a biosafety committee for working on genetically modified strains and so on. There is an institutional committee for stem cell research. And so I haven't really gone into the business aspect of it, but I know that there are ethical guidelines in place for business ethics also. So make sure that you are using these tools not to curb your creativity, but to basically transform your ideas into something which can become bigger. And people shouldn't be able to point out fingers to them. So I think this is what I have to say. And if there are any questions, then I would love to take them.
Thank you, Tapasya madam. I think it was one of the best lecture of today. And madam has discussed about the research ethics, about honesty, objectivity, a good stewardship, and the professionalism which has to go into it, the accountability. She also touched upon some good, some of the ethics that was breached and some ground rules which we have to follow. I think for the young researchers, this is one of the best platform to learn about research ethics. It is better to print or to publish it as a negative result instead of falsifying the data.
Correct.
So I think that is more, because as you were talking about, in case, especially if it is involving some human participants or animal participants, instead of falsifying the data and giving wrong results, it is better we go for saying that it is negative. At least you can again do the research once again.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much, madam. I think if in case we have any questions, you can post it in the chat box. Madam will be sending us her email, so that you can also contact her in the email. Thank you very much, madam. Thank you for the excellent presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have one of our proud alumni of our college who has done his graduation from our college and went on to do MSc from Calicut University and then PhD from Sweden. And he's now the senior scientist from Central Drug Design from Lucknow. We have Dr. Mukesh, who will be the next speaker. I request Srilata Madam to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to introduce the next speaker, Dr. Mukesh Paspalati, Principal Scientist and Associate Professor, Central Drug Research Institute, Lucknow. As madam said, he is one of the pride alumni of Chaitanya University. He obtained his master's degree from University of Calicut, India, and PhD from Lund University, Sweden. He published 83 papers with high impact factor and 2 books and 1 book chapter. He is grant reviewer for Natural Environment Research Council UK, Chilean National Antarctic Program, Vinevo, Sweden, and also Department of Science and Technology, India, Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, Indian Council of Medical Research. He successfully guided 3 PhD theses and 4 postdoctoral theses and 10 projects. He is a PhD thesis evaluator for Usmania University, Kakatiya University, Lucknow University, SRM University, and IIT Roorkee. He received Senior Scientist Award 2016 by Association of Biotechnology and Pharmacy, Guntur, Outstanding Scientist 2016 Award from Venus International Foundation, Chennai, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Award for Scientific Excellence 2016 from Marina Labs, Chennai. He is selected as Outstanding Student and Faculty Performers by Department of Biotechnology, Government of India. He is a life member of various national and international societies like Society for Biotechnologists India, Indian Peptide Society, Indian Immunology Society, Indian Society of Cell Biology, and also he is a life member of British Society for Antimicrobial Chemotherapy UK, American Peptide Society USA, International Society for Infectious Diseases USA. He is a life member of European Peptide Society, and he is also a member of American Society for Microbiology. Sir, really it gives me an immense pleasure to see you in this position. Sir, now I invite Dr. Mukesh sir to deliver his lecture on research writing. Thank you.
You can share your screen, Mukesh sir.
Yeah, ma'am. Just give me a second. Ma'am, can you see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So, thank you, ma'am, for inviting me on a Sunday. So it's always good to see my teachers who have taught me and my friends who are now venturing into PhD. So I'll just like to invite all the young PhDs who are coming up for their PhD studies. So before I start, I always try to say that PhD students or a PhD tag is an entirely a different breed of humans. Unlike normal people, we after the PhD, you start thinking everything in a logical way. You put rational over emotions. Normally, when we are outside, we take emotional decisions. But after PhD, you start looking rationally, even if you are buying vegetables in the market. So this type of transformation only occurs for PhD students because you start questioning the fundamentals, because the way you are taught starts, you start every day like, okay, why not that, why this? So this is all your aim as a PhD student should be like. You should always have this inbuilt characters to be automatically coming in you if you want to flourish in your careers. So what is the central element that makes the people working in Africa, working in Brazil and India to come together? So one of the important thing is the scientific communication. So scientific communication is the heart of the scientific community. So what do we communicate? We don't communicate about other thing. We just try to exchange the scientific knowledge. We try to ask specific questions and specific answers to it. So how do we communicate? We don't have this short tags or something. We always write our ideas or our knowledge in a form of scientific paper. So what does this scientific paper basically consist of? It consists of information like why did this scientist or the researcher do this experiment? How did he design the experiment and what did he do? And what was the meaning of the result? How does it enhance our knowledge? So these are the three fundamental reasons that how what does a scientific person do. But how does this happen? First you make an observation, you make a hypothesis, you make experiments, you analyze the data, whether your data is now matching with the analysis. If not, you redo the experiments, because sometimes you do an experiment with a wrong technique, so you get a wrong results. So this is how you do new experiment. And once you find the results are in concordance with your hypothesis or opposite to that, you draw the conclusions and then you communicate it. And communication is the center point or the basic essence of all the researcher. Unless until you don't publish anything, the data does not exist. So you have to publish. Nowadays, there is a recent proverb called publish or perish. Uh, yes, it happens. If you don't publish, the data doesn't exist. If data doesn't exist, you don't exist. If you have identified something or if you have shown that this is how particular phenomenon works, then you have to publish that particular data. So, so the next one is, how do you publish? What are the forms? Like you have, when it comes to the normal communications, you have TVs, newspapers, dailies, weeklies, and annual reports or something. But when it comes to science, in science, we publish in different formats, like scientific reports, review articles, journal articles, books and book chapters. And then when you complete your study, you publish your thesis or dissertations. And then whenever you go out for a conference, you present your slides and posters. And to do some research, we have to write research grants. And these are all comes under the forms of scientific communications. So if you are the only thing that is very clear in scientific communications are scientific papers are written in a style that is clearly and concise. So you don't have to change the formats. If I read a paper in Journal of Biological Chemistry or a Journal of English, they have the style and clear consequence, what they are doing, why they are doing, what is the importance of it. This is very, very clearly written, and it is the essence of all scientific papers. If you are not able to write a scientific paper very clearly and concise, then you are out. And as a young PhD students are who are going to come into the PhD, they have to learn how to read paper quickly. Because let me tell you an example. When I started my PhD, there were only 8 papers, like a month or something. By the time I finished my PhD, the number of papers in my research area moved from 8 to 18 per week. And now it's somewhere around 60 papers every week. So I have to glance through all the 60 papers every week as soon as possible, pick out what is relevant to my work and read them, and what is not relevant, I have to move it away. So if you're not able to read any scientific paper, or if you're not reading them, then you are lost in the race. This you have to remember very clearly. So you have to read as much as possible, as fast as possible. There are two things: reading as much as possible and as fast as possible. So now I will focus my next half an hour of talk, like what all things you should read and how you can read them faster. So the first thing is, most people in their starting of their careers go back to textbooks. No, textbooks are outdated. You are not supposed to read textbooks. You have already done that. You have master's degree based upon the textbooks. But now you have to focus on journal for two reasons why you should read it. First thing is to get what latest is occurring will occur only in a journal. It never happens in your textbook, because once it comes into journal, once that phenomenon has been proved beyond any doubt, then that technology or the phenomenon comes into textbooks. So it is quite old dated. What you see in today's textbook is what it is reported in a journal at least 15 to 10 years back. So you have to remember that point. So if you read something from textbook, that means it is more than 10 years old. Now, What is the second important is to know where you should start your work, because someone has already done it, someone has already finished so many things. So you don't have to redo that experiments again. So now you should know where is your running race. And apart from that, by reading the research articles, you know how to do a research. Like, okay, X is a question. So Y is the technique that you should use to answer that X question. It is not a Z technique. Next point, you have to learn critically about the quality of research papers. Like sometimes when I have 4 or 5 journals, I don't go by the journal name. Like some people say that if a paper comes in Cell or Science or Nature is more important than that comes in current science. No, what the data will decide which is important, not the Cell, Nature or Science or the current science. If the quality of the research is good, if it answers a fundamentally important question, it's fine with me. I don't care where it is published. And second one is to gain a perspective, like understand what is happening in your field, where the field is going or where the field is starting. Like for example, if you look at your big professors, they worked on enzymology topics. Now that enzymology topic is done in a MSc or a BSc class. If you look at your supervisors, they worked on topics which are now slowly coming into textbook. So what you have to do is to understand, gain that perspective. Okay, what I am doing today is what others have done or whether it is new. If it is new, how new it is and how much it is going to gain in the knowledge. And the most important thing is at the end of your PhD, you have to write papers. And for your entire career, it goes on if you are in research. You have to write papers. If you become supervisors, you have to correct your students' papers. So this is a continuous cycle. And once you enter into the cycle, there is only incoming, no outgoing in these options. So what you should read as a PhD student, and if you are a supervisor, what is your top priority to read? So normally I ask my all PhD students and whoever comes in my contact to read the review papers pertaining to your field that are published in last 5 years. This will give you a very clear picture what is done and what is to be done. Then journal articles for 4 years. If it is a general topic, then 2 years is fine. If it is a very unique topic, whether you are looking for the action of some enzyme X or you are looking how many people worked on some statistical formula or how many people have worked on some particular author literature, how he has written the literature or some mathematical equations, then 4 years is fine. If it is quite journal, then 2 years is fine. And don't go for textbooks, you always go for books. Books are something like nowadays, in order to start a new field, elsewhere, Springer and so many companies are coming, which are trying to put 20-30 articles on a specific topic. Like for example, enzyme X. All the authors working on the enzyme X will come up and write a book where each one will describe about one. One will talk about the enzyme origin or where it is found, how it is found. When it comes to mathematics, one of the least and the most the easy one is mathematics, because I've seen my friends publishing paper 1 in 3 years. So you don't, if they are publishing less means you have less to read. But there are some people where you publish a lot. Like in English literature, there are so many papers coming up. In science, it is in infinity. You every day get hundreds of papers if you go on searching. Like what you see today on a PubMed number and tomorrow it will be different. So you have to see what is your subject and where are these books and book chapters. And if you are, one of the first thing that all PhDs should do is to go back the thesis or the dissertations of the lab, because normally most labs have the same thing. Like what your seniors have done, that type of work you continue. So you give it, if you go back your senior thesis and dissertations, you get an idea like what all things you have to do and what all the things that are available in the lab and which you can start your work within a 6 to 1 year time once you finish off your review of literature. Supervisors should mostly focus on reviews, journal articles, hypotheses, and very critically, they have to search for opinions, because this opinions give a line where your work should go in the next 10 years. Because people who write opinions are really, really big shots, and they're worked on this line for years together to tell. And these are the very good, these are your compasses for your research work. And letters to editors will give you an update. Technical notes will give you which technique to use for which method and what are the advantages over the commercial one. And always research proposals and grant proposals you have to read, so that you can come up with new things. So coming back to the situation, like, okay, I have decided that I will read a journal article, but how do I decide which journal articles I should read out of 60? So the first thing I look them is the title. What is the title? Whether the title is related to me or not. For example, it says influence of habits. Now, this is a very, very broad title. It could be, the article could talk about psychology, the article could talk about biochemistry, the article could talk about immunology, it could talk about the neurobiology, or it even can talk about the literature, like how the habits are going to influence your reading habits or something like that. So the first thing when I read this type of a title, I go back to the keywords, like what are the keywords? What is he talking about? Whether it is related to my subject or not. For example, I'm looking for the influence of habits on metabolism. The word, if metabolism is there in the keywords, then I will read the abstract, summary and conclusion. If there is no keyword which talks about metabolism, then I simply skip that article. So the title is your guide way, where you have to first read the title very, very critically. If you find the title, what you are looking for is clear, then go back to your keywords, like what are the keywords that you are looking at, are they there or not? If they are there, then go back to the abstract or summary or conclusion. Normally, abstract gives you like what are the conclusions of that particular work, whether the aims and objectives are there, or why did this work is done or not. These all things, if it is information is there, then I will read that entire article. If it is not there, then I simply skip the article. So this should be the guideline, because when you are starting your PhD, I think you have to sort out from around 5,000 to 10,000 articles, like what is related to your work. Like for example, if you type habits, then you'll get like 20,000 or 30,000 hits on Google Scholar or PubMed. Then you start, right, habits and metabolism, then it comes to 5,000 or something. Like habits and immunology, something like 3,000 articles will come. So you have to short down them based upon the title. So sit for a day or a half and short out what all articles you need to read and what all articles you should not read, even though the title is matching. So this is the most critical point, how to read faster, because otherwise you'll spend a lot of time and miss the main article, and then you just beat around the bush without any ultimate goal. So the first thing you have to look is critically the title and the keywords. These two are your guidelines to select which paper you should read. And once you have shortlisted the paper, it doesn't mean that you have to read the entire paper at the first glance. First thing is you have to look at, once you have looked at the abstract, you have to analyze how does it matter to me? Does it matter to me to read this paper or not? Is it going to enhance my knowledge? Yes, then I should read that paper. Now, after I read the abstract, I go back to the introduction. And introduction, I just have a glance and see whether it is telling me what is the gap and what is the results. If it is telling, then it is fine. If it is not telling, then I'm going to skip the paper. Most papers, most brilliant papers are being rejected by less citations by this approach. Always in introduction, you have to write 1 or 2 lines, what is the conclusion of the paper. Scientific paper is not a crime thriller where you keep the murderer until the end, suspense. There is no suspense element in science. You have to tell your introduction, the 1 line, what is your result. If that is there, means the author has done the research in a good format. So he knows how to do a research. So I would prefer that paper over the other papers. Then next I will see whether the figures are in logical steps, whether there is this particular paper is filling some gap, then I will read the entire paper. If none of these questions is negative, then I don't read the paper, how relevant it is to my work. So if you want to have recognition and if you want to have your paper to be cited, then you should have this 4 important points. Like you have to tell in the abstract how it matters, what is the gap it is filling, and what are your results as early as possible to the reader. If you're not able to tell that, then your paper will be rejected in the second phase. So always remember that introduction is quite bigger than the materials and methods. Or most of the times, the introduction is the most critical point that very difficult to write. If you look at the introduction, materials and methods, results and discussion, the difficult part to write is discussion and introduction. Most people think that this is the most easy, but this is the most difficult part to write. So if I put the graph like this that on the level of difficulty, so you can see how big the difficulty in writing introduction and discussion, whereas the materials and methods is very small because you know you have done it and you know that, okay, I have taken this, I have added this, or I have added that, and I got this one. So now once I decide my paper, how to analyze that paper is the first important thing. So when I'm reading the entire paper, the first thing is I will try to look whether that paper's introduction is telling my area of work very clearly or not. Whether it is conceptualizing the problem, whether it is telling the what are the solutions that are currently available, what is my aim of approach, or what is the author's question and everything. So normally if I put that in a single slide, so it is like all introductions start with general and they come to specific. So if I put it in my word, say, or it in relation to my area of work, then it is like, what is your field and what is your work? When you write your paper, you should take this as an example, like, okay, what is new in my field, or what is the problem in my field, and how my work is going to fill that field. So this is how you have to start with your writing with introduction. Introduction is very difficult part because you have to balance this both. You should not write too much about your field and too much about your work. You have to balance the field and your work. So this is what is a critical point. So when you read at the papers, if you look at the left side, so how does a scientific introduction look? It starts with a general, what is the problem? What are the solutions that are available? What is the current solution? What is the gap in the knowledge? And then it comes from a general to very specific. So if you look the general problem, general solution, general applications, the gaps and the limitations, and then what is the question that the author has asked and how the aims of the study or the methodology he has used. The same, you will be coming with the general concepts and everything, your field, what is happening in your field, whether it is statistics, biology, or English or chemistry or anything. I would like to tell that mostly I will cite from three examples, mostly from chemistry, biology, and statistics, because these are the three areas where I routinely work as part of my job responsibilities. So English and statistics are very weak for me because I don't work on these lines quite often. So if anyone has any question, just type that in the chat box. I will be happy to answer them. So materials and methods, if you are a very good, if you know that one, then you can skip that. Materials and methods, you can skip that, but sometimes you have to go back to ask some questions like whether the experiment was done with enough numbers or whether it is not done with enough numbers. What was the conditions, whether, like, for example, I have a paper where some person got bacteria from a Himalayas and started growing them in the in somewhere in Rajasthan. I was like, it looks quite fascinating work, but then I looked at it. Where was the conditions? How did the bacteria which grows in cold temperature started growing in Rajasthan, which is always around 40, 45. Then I saw that he started growing the bacteria in a fridge. That makes sense. So sometimes you have to have this logical questioning and then go back, and this is the way you get your answers. So materials and methods, you have to very, very critically write. If that person has not written that, I have grown the bacteria in a fridge, then I would have rejected the paper as null hypothesis. How can a bacteria which grows at Himalayas where the temperature is below 4 started growing which is above 40? So these are the critical parameters that you get in materials and methods, and you have to really give very critical thing when you write your materials and methods. And unfortunately, this is the section of a paper which is least read by most of the people. But those who are working as a starting of your career, you should read this, because this will tell you which experiment, how to do, what are the conditions that you have to keep, especially those who are working in enzymology and physiology, because if you change the conditions, your experiment will go wrong. And results and discussions are the most important thing, because this is the where portion of the paper where you describe your results. The numbers what you get from your machine are converted into text so that everyone can understand. This is the section where this event occurs. Like you have the numbers from your experimental machine, so you convert them into text so that people understand what is it. Like report statistical probability, discuss what does that result mean, and where do they hypothesize, what is the relevance of this work to the other works, and then you end with your significance of your work. So when you read a paper, okay, this person has done this experiment, so what is the results he got? So this is what is present in results and discussion. So when you read some other paper, you have to look what experiments he did and what results he got, how that results are relevant, and how it is related to the other people works. When you write, the rule applies to the same to you. You have to write what results you got, how is it related, and how it is not related to others' work, or how you are going to prove it. Now, so normally results and discussions are very difficult to follow for two fundamental reasons. Is because you have to juggle between the figures and the text, figure and the text. So normally, to avoid such a situation, I normally take a notes like, okay, what did he write? When I look at the figures, I write, okay, figure statistically significant, so that I don't go back to the figures. So what he says in the text is relevant. If I see that it is not statistically significant in the figures, but in the text he has written statistically significant result, then I have to look that it is a wrong presentation of the data. So normally read the text, refer to the figure, and once you go back to the figure, write down the notes like, okay, statistically significant, or out of the 5 compounds, compound A or compound B is performing far better or far lower, or compound Y is coming in high quantity or a lower quantity, or the enzyme's activity is very high at that particular pH or at that particular temperature. So you have to make a notes of it, like what is the basic thing. And sometimes when you are starting off your career, you always come with some new terminology or some new techniques which you have not read. Like nuclear magnetic resonance is very common for a chemistry person, but not for a biologist. Or for a chemistry person, for a biologist, SDS page or your electrophoresis is quite common, but not for a chemist. So how to match up that? So nowadays the field has become interdisciplinary. Like chemistry people and biology people are coming together and presenting their work in drug discoveries or in synthetic biology or some new fields like bioelectronics. And these are the fields where this is an upcoming field, and you have to learn both the chemistry part or the physical part or the physics part. So when I don't understand any of the technique or anything, the first option, the mother of all videos, you go back to YouTube and type it. So there, one or the other video will be there. So they try to explain you what is that particular thing, or how do you do the technique, or what are the limitations of the technique. Or the other thing that I do is a online visual journal called Joe, which gives you the protocols online. So some of the protocols, how you do, they make a video of it, the scientists make a video of it and present it there, so that that technique is used all over the world. These are the two things. If you don't understand, don't worry. No one knows everything. Even I don't know so many things, but I know where to search. That is the thing that all PhD should learn. Like if you don't know, it is fine, but you should know where to search for it. That is the important point. So you always go for YouTube or Joe. YouTube is most generalized one. If you are very new to the technique, you go for YouTube to see how it is. And if you know something about it, the Jove is the best option. So always when it comes to the discussion, so always this is the most critical point, because it always tells the relationship between the present work that is presented in the paper with the what is known in the field. So you have to look what conclusions did the author draw, or what conclusions you should draw when you are writing it, and how the data is significant. Always remember, take a A4 sheet page, write your notes on it, and once you are there, you attach it. Or else, if you are a fan of like high-tech electronic version people, nowadays most of them write in their Adobe PDFs, there are an option called comments, where you can put the arrow mark and start writing your comments. So whatever is comfortable, you can do it. But I come from an old school where computer was not so much as nowadays. So I still follow the paper format rule. So I write down it so that I remember it in a far better way. So if I put last 5 slides in a single slide, then this is what you have to do. You have to look at the title very critically, the star mark, the abstract, and the keywords, and what is the introduction, and what is the results and discussion. So these are the 6 things that you have to look very critically when you are writing your scientific paper, or when you are writing your reading a scientific paper. These are the 5 areas which have to be critically evaluated, critically read, critically understood, and critically noted down. So now, so I know that when you are coming from a textbook, textbook is quite simple. It always like a movie, it goes on in sentences and sentences. But here, papers are something not like that. You have to read, understand it, correlate it, and draw conclusions. So what I do is I don't do a passive reading. I do it active reading. Like when I sit on a paper, I always read the entire starting from the first line to introduction very actively with focused mind. I don't read between the lines. If you don't understand, read it again. If I don't understand something, I read again and again, or I try to write down a notes and try to put it in different forms and see that. Always taking a notes is compulsory. For all PhDs, this is my advice, take a notes. Don't trust your human brain, because human brain can remember anything only for 3 days. After that, unless until it is a critical event, unless something it is very long or very deep in your mind, it stays for longer time. Otherwise, you have a temporary memory and it goes off. Always take a note so that it sticks on your notebook. Either you take short notes or something, or notepads or something, small scribbling stuff or something, whatever is comfortable, take notes. Try to draw mini figures. Like for example, they are trying to make something, like I put an enzyme. If I'm working on an enzyme, I draw a mini figure of the enzyme, okay. And then I write to put at what pH it works, at what temperature it works, where it is found and how it is found, like that. If I'm working on some statistics, I try to write the formula or something and make a notes of it, like what are the different components of that, what does the pi in this mean, or what does phi in this mean, or what does the superscript in this mean, or something like that. And if it is a chemistry, then it is very straightforward, draw the structures. It is the other structure and put R, and then you write down R. What does R? Does it mean NH2, NH3, CH4, or anything, alkene, alkyne, or anything, whatever might be. So if you make the figure what the author has not presented and what you have understood, it is very easy when you go back to your data when you're writing your thesis or when you're writing paper. And if you find a new word or a new vocabulary, write down what is it. And whatever you read any paper, you have, after you complete your reading your paper, you have to answer 4 questions. What is the knowledge, whether it is accepted or rejected, whether it is directly related or indirectly related, whether the hypothesis has been tested properly or not, what is the basic conclusions. This is very, very important. You either find this conclusion in the last paragraph of any scientific paper or the last paragraph of introduction. These are the two locations where always the basic conclusions are kept. There is, as I told you earlier, there is no surprise endings and no crime thrillers in scientific papers. So these are the areas where you have to critically focus. And if you are not able to read a scientific paper, you always try to take a notes. And this is the best way to start off. I started off in the same way. And one of the major things that apart from scientific writing, what people do is to write a monthly or an annual report. I don't know, but we write annual reports. So it's very difficult. What I did in January to remember it in the month of December when it is very cold in Lucknow. So what I do is I go back to my scribblings and get back to things. But for you people, you have to write your monthly or annual report. So how to start with? All students have to write a report. This is compulsory because your first year to second year promotion depends upon what you have written on a report. So when you write a report writing and scientific writing is roughly the same. Like I think 95% it is same. Like it has the same title, abstract, introduction, materials and method, results and discussion. What are your future plans and what is the conclusion that you have drawn from your first year? But when you write down, you don't write it in the same order, like title, abstract, introduction, materials. You write it in a different way. First, you start making figures. Once you have your figures, then you make the tables. And based upon the figures and tables, you write results. Like, okay, I did this experiment, I got this results. I did that tables, literature survey, and I got this result. Once you have the figures, tables, and results, based upon the results, you write the discussion like, okay, what is the relationship between experiment A, experiment B, how A experiment is related to the normal world or how it is related to the scientific community. Once you have finished your discussion, you write methods because you know in which order. If you write methods first and when writing the discussion, you realize that the pH assay should be somewhere else or some section has to be somewhere else. Then you will be wasting time in moving it from there to here. So once you write your results, you know that in which order it has to be. So the materials and methods will be in the same order. So now you write introduction because based upon the results only you write your introduction. So you know that which is the field you are talking of and where you are going off. So what is your conclusion out of the work? Unless until you don't write your results, you cannot write the end sentence or the end paragraph of introduction. So always start with figures, make the tables, and then start writing results, discussions, then methods, and then introduction. And then you come back to the other parts, like writing the abstract. And always think writing results, discussion, abstract takes very, very long time than writing other sections because these are the very critical points. Whether it is your manuscript or whether it is your report. This is the thing which everyone looks very critically. If I need something else, I go back to materials and methods, but results and discussions are very important. And then you can write keywords. This is like a half a day job. What I do is from the entire results, discussion, material, introduction, I find out the words which I have oftenly used and I just put them as keywords. And then the title. This is one of the critical points. So I have to spend a lot of time on putting a title which is broad and which is very clear. Then authors and acknowledgements. This is a general one. This is mostly authors and acknowledgements are only for the manuscript, not for the report. So one of the important thing is once you write it down, you have to be very, very critical to do proofreading. You have to read the proof. Always read the proof before you submit. Don't submit without proofreading because proof without no manuscript or no paper comes very well in the first instance. I always revise it like 8 to 10 times before I send it to any of the journal or anything. So one of the important things that you have to remember is words have to be precise and they have to be consistent and the abstracts have to match and then the grammar has to be acceptable. The first important point is if you don't do anything of this sort, you will irritate your reader or you send your supervisor crazy. Of course, nowadays supervisors are far better. I have seen my professors throwing the PhD students' thesis out of the lab. It was flying out in the air. So probably you people are far better. You have a very mild supervisors, because I know, because I studied under them. But still, you should not send your supervisor crazy. So how how do you know what is the critical things that your supervisor look in your paper? Like, you think that you have made a very beautiful paper which is black in color, it goes to your supervisor and comes in red in color, all markings plus minus and everything. So the four important things that every supervisor looks are more or less same is the style of the language, what is the language that you have used, what is the structure of the paper, like how did you write? Did you write the abstract properly, the conclusions properly, introduction properly, or anything? Or what are the ethical issues you have answered or not, whether the paper has any plagiarism or not, or how is the overall components of the paper. So these are the four things that your supervisor or any reader will look in your writings. So it is not so difficult because English language is very, very important. Don't think that it is not required. Unfortunately, I know that English is not our first language. It comes somewhere around third as per the Indian, because mother tongue, then national language, and then it is English. But English, you have to master it by heck or by hell or by crook. This is most important thing that you should learn. If you are not able to find a good English one, so always make a friend who is good at English in English department. Always do this one if you're not very good, so that he can read your papers. So there is no room for ambiguity. You cannot write whatever comes in your mind. You're not a best-selling book author or something. You are a scientific person. There is a format. There is a clarity that has to be there. So first thing, that how you send your supervisor or reader very crazy is by using wrong tenses. You have to learn that always abstract, you write in past tense or present tense depending upon what you are saying. Whereas in introduction, you always use present perfect. Methods is always present. So you have to learn these tenses. What are these? You cannot write whatever you cannot write materials and methods in past tense. Okay, I have taken 25 grams of leaves and crushed it with some XYZ. No, you have to have it very clearly written there. Because your lab notebook and your scientific communication is different. In lab notebook, we write it, take 25 grams of XYZ and do the reaction. That is fine. But when you write it in a scientific presentation, you have to write that 25 milligrams of X compound or X substance has been taken to start the reaction. So this is what fundamental differences that happen in tenses. When you're writing your lab notebook or when you're writing your something else, you can write whatever way you want. But when it comes to the scientific thing, you have to have perfect tenses. Most papers get rejected because of absence of tenses, or you send your reader crazy for the tenses. So I have these slides. This is quite oftenly available in internet, like short table that you always stick to your before you. And the second one is, people always write big paragraphs. No, always keep your paragraphs as simple as possible, like not more than 8 to 10 lines or to particular topic. If you're talking about enzyme, keep it that one. If you're talking about the relationship between enzyme and a pH, make separate paragraph. Don't mix the both. Always you have a division of text in sentences and paragraphs very, very clearly. Like how much has to be a paragraph. If you are changing the line or the logic, move for another paragraph. And sometimes I see people, in order to impress their supervisor and show that I'm more better in English than you, use something which is words are very vague or they're superfluous phrases. No, we are not in the area where we are writing something like what do you call, like a movie article or something. We are writing something, or we are not on a public dais where we have to impress the chief guest. No, this is how you have to use words which are very familiar, which are very precise rather than far-fetched. That means sometimes a single word will have multiple meanings depending upon the context. Very, very careful with those words. Like for example, utilize. Utilize has a multiple meanings. So you have to be very familiar when you are going to use that word, utilize. And some things, vague words. Like for example, the one of the thesis evaluations I did, it was quite funny. So I would like to tell that one. Uh, stand it, stand the flask at 25 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes. This was the word that he has to use. What he did is, flask was hold and stood for 25 minutes. Now the question was whether the person was standing at 25 degrees or the flask was standing. Why he should hold the flask for 30 minutes, I did not understand. This was the question I asked him. So this is a critical one, like how do you use that far-fetched vague words? So you have to be very clear, like what you are writing when you are writing your materials and methods and discussion. Your words are very, very critical. And always keep the sentences short and don't keep them long. If you're keeping long, the reader will go for yanning. And always stick to one or two ideas for a sentence. Don't make it very much. And one of the important thing that always paper gets a reviewer minor comment is American and British English. So you have to stick to one. Don't mix them up. Most times people, you mix them. And the other thing is, always when you are writing the sentences or the words, be very, very clear to each word, because we know that from childhood we are taught to write it. We are not taught to read or look at critically. So for example, practice and practice are both have a single word difference, that is C and S, and that makes a lot of difference. So you have to critically look at each word to avoid ambiguity, because most of the papers have these issues. And don't trust your supervisor or your word software. Your supervisor is not your babysitter. He is not going to teach you English unless you are in an English PhD program. If you are in science, he's not there for you to teach English. It is you have to learn it. And I think ethical issue was completed in the last presentation, so I'll skip it up. The second problem that always comes up is with figures. Always, most people make figures unnecessarily, or they write big paragraphs to define the data. So you have to make a call when to make a figure and when to make a graph. Always remember, graphs are far better than tables, but to make a graph, the relationship between two parameters should be there. For example, why do we make tables when there is no relationship? For example, you are doing a survey, like how much amount of money is there for an adult and for an older generation people. There is no relation, because the older can be male, female, individual, or anything. But when you make a pH influence of an enzyme, you make a graph, you don't make a table, because the enzyme is fixed, only the pH is variable. But when you do a statistical analysis, mostly mathematics has more tables than graphs. Biology has more graphs than tables. This is fundamental rules that everyone has to remember. So you have to learn when to make a table and when to make a graph. So always, if you find the relationship between two parameters, then go for a graph. If you don't find relationship between two parameters, then you go for a table. This is a golden rule in when to make a graph and when to make a table. The second important thing is you have to make figures. Most people send figures without any legends or without any self-explanatory. We never know what he is talking about. That means the x-axis is missing, or the y-axis legend is mixing, or even whether the black color is coding for something or white color is coding for something. We never know. And the other one is the statistics. Like, what is the statistics you are using? You have to write down whether it is 99% similar or 95% similar. And sometimes people use different units. They mess out of the units. Like for seconds, it is yes. Don't put something else for yes. And one of the other important is tables. Tables, I would prefer to use less amount of tables than the figures. I use tables only when there is no relationship between 3 or 4 parameters, and then I make a table. And making a table is very easy than making a graph. So you have to make a call based upon your data, your suggestion, which is far better. But don't make both. If you make a figure, don't make a table. If you make a table, don't make a figure. So this is another critical thing where your supervisor or the reader goes crazy, because I don't want to read the data again and again when I understood once. And some of the frequently did mistakes that you do unknowingly, that is, you put too many figures. You think that if you put too many figures, people think that you have done a lot. No. If you put relevant figures only, people will appreciate your work. If you put too many figures, then they go crazy. And then you make mistakes and then you are caught. And the other one is, don't make sloppy style of references or sloppy. Sometimes people write, it is known, it is well reported in the literature. That means you did not take enough care to see whether it is reported or not. And the other one is, sometimes you make sentences very, very vague. Plants attempt. What do plants attempt? Nothing. Like you have to write, plants accumulate or plant try to take. Attempt is a wrong word. So these type of sentences make the word simply change the sentence meaning. So you have to be very, very clear. And one more thing I see very oftenly is using too many decimals. No, in maths, it makes a sense. In astronomy, it makes a sense. In physics, it makes a sense. But in biology, it doesn't make any sense. I don't care whether it is 2.39 or 2.39876 or something. I only care whether it is relevant or not. Even 0.23 will also do for me. If I have too many numbers, so it confuses your reader. So don't do that mistake unless until it is critically important. And the other thing is, have a critical look at your punctuations, where you are putting your comma, semicolon, or colon, or full stop, or anything. Most of the time, people forget to put one full stop, and the paragraph will have like 20 lines, and the reader will get confused. So these are the frequent mistakes that you do, and this is the frequent mistakes that your supervisor gets irritated. So always have this in your mind that you should not use too many numbers, too many figures, and too many sloppy statements, or too many, each word has a meaning, so you have to learn that meaning. And nowadays, people in our own time, or when we were just the master students or something, my supervisor used to write paper, the entire manuscript on a paper. But nowadays we don't write it. We always write it on a computer. So always, if you are writing on a computer, you should always learn some things to make your paper far better. So what are the things that you should have the thing very clear? One thing is, for manuscript writing, you should use MS Word if you are a biologist. If you are a physical chemistry student or a mathematics student, go for LaTeX. Because there you have to put a lot of formulas and everything, and LaTeX is the best option than MS Word. MS Word does not give you an option to put a lot of formulas and a lot of things. Especially for MS Word is far better for chemists, biologists, and English people where there is no concept of formulas in extensively used. Whereas for making graphs, I've seen people making graphs in Excel. Hold on, guys. Excel is not made for making graphs. You have to use Sigma plot or a graph pad. These are the two softwares that are made for the making graphs. Nowadays, some online softwares are also available, so you can use that one also. But I always prefer to use either Sigma plot or GraphPad. And to write references, I always use EndNote because it's on my computer. Whereas Mendeley and Zotero, they're free softwares, and they need a continuous internet facility. If you have that, you can use it. But you have to learn how to use this one, like either the EndNote or Mendeley. Zotero, I would not recommend because it's something very critical. There are some patch-up issues, which I learned it when I'm using it. And so now I don't use it anymore. Apart from that, to make figures, if you are a biologist, you have to learn Adobe Photoshop. No excuse. You have to learn this because if you want to send a journal article to a high impact journal, or to make your figures look elegant and like Picasso or something, you have to use Adobe Photoshop. Don't make it on a Word or a PowerPoint. No, PowerPoint is not made for that one. If you are a biologist, I would suggest Chem Biodraw is also good if you are a biologist or a chemist. For chemistry people, you have to learn this Chem Biodraw. This is the most beautiful software I've ever seen for chemistry. It's so easy and so cool software for making figures. So these are the 6 softwares which you should learn. Out of them, 3 are compulsory and 3 are optional. So whatever 4 are compulsory and 2 are optional. So you have to learn any of these softwares if you want to make a nice report, nice annual report, or nice paper presentation. If you don't use that, they will be, mostly the work will be rejected. Because as a reviewer, the first thing I look at is how the figures are made. If any scientist has made beautiful figures, then I'm inclined to review that paper more than any other papers. So some of the things I have told, like there are some more things like avoid abbreviations, don't use too many abbreviations, and don't use too many slangs. I have already told you. So always have your words very carefully. Like significant means it is statistically significant in biology, whereas for a significant reaction in chemistry is different. So you have to differentiate between them. If I say significant for a biologist, he thinks that the data is statistically significant. If I say significant to a chemist, he thinks that the yield is very high. So this is what you have to know, when to use which word. And the other thing is, don't depend upon your word processing spelling check. Most people don't do proofreading or don't check their spellings, but check the spellings. This is one of the things that always goes wrong. 99 times this goes wrong in anyone. So the take home message, so before I close down, I would like to tell that you need to learn English language. Don't send your supervisor the first draft. You do always proofreading, and no paper comes perfect in first stage. Even for the best selling book author person also, it never comes. If he says that I wrote this entire book in one sitting and one day and it has come this way, then he's telling lie. No one can write like that. And always when you're writing your paper or a report or annual, know your audience, whether you are writing it to the organization or whether you are writing to a general audience or whether you are writing to a scientific community. So know your audience and write it up. And pay attention towards the tenses, like what are the tenses? What is the structure of the graphs, paragraphs? How are they? And most critical important thing is that you have to pay attention towards the tenses, and always break them. Like, don't write the entire paper on one day. Day one, you write introduction. Or day one, you write the result. Day two, you write the discussion. Day three, you write the introduction. If you start writing entire thing on one day, then you will not able to get a one. You break up the bigger project into smaller one. And always before you write down, you make your ideas on a piece of paper, so that if you come after 2-3 days, you still stick that to the same idea. And one important thing that I always tell the young PhDs is, save your data at 3-4 places. I have seen people just before submitting their PhD thesis, the computer broke down and the data is lost. No, this should not happen with any one of you people. Always, like if I finish off my work today, I'll spend some 10 minutes and back up that whole data on the next day. But before I start the work, I save my data. I always save my data at 4 places, so that even if one goes wrong, I can get it from second. Even if second one also goes wrong, I get it from third. So you have to always back up your data every day. If you have done some experiment today, you have analyzed the data, save the data. And finally, these are my last slides. So I have to thank my entire team of PhD students, postdocs, and technical people who always keep me on my toes. And this is my team, which always keep me on toes, working and writing and writing. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can reach me or you can ask me on the chat box, as ma'am has said. This is what I want to tell to you people.
Thank you, Mukesh. It was a real wonderful experience of listening to you, and at the same time, I think you have even written a book on how to write a scientific paper. So I was very particular that you take up this particular topic. And I think most of our research scholars will be benefited by what you have written, actually what to study when they are reading that particular paper. It was indeed a very good experience for all, including the research supervisors. Thank you very much, Mukesh, for taking your time. And
Thank you, ma'am.
for the participants, I want to again tell you that he's also one of our Board of Studies member and also a PhD evaluator. So you can always reach him. Of course, he's a very, very busy person. He was actually in the COVID treatment process, and just yesterday, he texted me saying that he has come out of that particular what you call COVID. Some treatment. He used to go for some testing of those COVID patients. So hope you are safe, Mukesh. And if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat box, or we'll send you his email. You can email to him. Thank you very much, Mukesh.
Okay, ma'am.
Next, we have our Director of PG Programs, Dr. S. Kavita, who is also Head of the Department of Chemistry, who will be taking up the next session. And I request Srilata Madam to introduce Madam.
Thank you, Madam. Now I would like to introduce the next speaker, our beloved principal, Professor Kavita Madam. She obtained her MSc and PhD from Kakatiya University. She has 25 years of teaching experience in Chaitanya University. She published 49 papers with high impact factor and one book with ISBN number. She completed one major research project. She successfully guided one PhD scholar. She also has administrative experience as Head Department of Chemistry, Chairman Board of Studies for PG, and now she is a Director of PG programs. She is woman of virtue and simplicity. Madam, really I am very happy and feel proud to introduce you. Now I invite Kavita Madam to deliver her lecture on plagiarism. Thank you, Madam.
Am I audible?
Yes, Madam.
If you are audible, you can even stretch your slide.
Okay. Thank you, Srilata Madam, for giving a brief introduction. Good morning, everyone. Now I'm going to talk about plagiarism. So in this brief lecture, I'm going to speak about what is plagiarism and what are the different styles of citations and types of plagiarisms, methods of plagiarism checkers, and steps to avoid plagiarism. So this plagiarism topic is very important for every researcher because whenever we go for writing an article or thesis on anything, we have to know all these fundamentals because it again comes back to us. Again, we have to repeat the paper or thesis. So this is very important aspect and every researcher have to know. So what is plagiarism? Plagiarism means, the Latin plagium means kidnapping. Kidnapping means it is not a person's kidnapping, the intellectual theft. That is, we are thefting or we are stealing the thoughts and information of another person who have already done the work. And we are taking and we are writing and we are representing it as our own. That is called as plagiarism. That is stealing either information or thoughts or ideas or tables or figures or text or illustrations without giving any credit to them is called as plagiarism. So whenever we are taking any sentence from any other's work, the first and foremost thing is we represent it as our own work. It is their work, but we are representing as our own work. That kind of act is called as plagiarism. So it is considered as a very serious offense. It comes under academia dishonest. That is, when we are writing an article, we have to write our own sentences, our own ideas, our own thoughts have to be put on paper, and we have to present that as a paper or article or any thesis or any book. So not only in our subjects, even in any kind of aspects, plagiarism is playing an important role. That is, in 1977, a musician, Marvin Gaye, composed a music album that is Got to Give It Up. In that, that album was already released in 1977. And in 2013, again, Robin Thicke copied some tunes from Marvin Gaye and composed a new album, which is named as Blurred Lines. And this was reported in 2015. And for that, he was punished by $7.3 million as a fine or imposed punishment. So this is also plagiarism. So music tunes, or either it is thesis writing, or either it is paper writing or articles, publications, anything, if you are stealing others' knowledge or others' intelligence, that becomes a plagiarism. So we need to write our own knowledge, and we have to use our own words for writing any kind of thesis or paper. So in order to avoid this, we need to give a credit to that person from whom we have taken the work. That is by giving citation. So what is citation? Citation is a formal reference to a published or unpublished work. Citation is nothing but a formal or reference to a published or unpublished work. That is, citation means after, suppose we are taking some sentences from others' work. After completing the sentence, we have to give credit. That is, we have to give the name of that author, or year of publishing, or paper number from which we have taken that sentence or that text or the table, so that we are giving credit to that person. Then it doesn't come under Plagiarism Act. So we have different styles of these citations. APA is one of the style of citation. That is American Psychological Association. According to this style of citation, after completing the sentence, we have to give the author's name, year of publishing, and page number. If you do this work after taking the sentence, after completing the sentence, that we are avoiding plagiarism. Number second type of style of citation is MLA style of citation. That is Modern Language Association. This, according to this style, after completing the sentence, that is the text which we have taken from other author, we have to give the name of the author and year of publishing. No need of writing the paper number or page number. So this is used for all languages, that is either literature works or social sciences. All the publications which are articles which are published in languages or social sciences, they use MLA type of citations. And for all science publications or books, they go for APA style of citations. Another one is Vancouver style of citation. What is Vancouver style of citation? Vancouver style of citation is nothing but we are giving only the reference number which is enclosed in the square bracket after completing the text, which is taken from the other author. That is in parenthesis. That is suppose we are taking some 2 or 3 lines from other author's work. After completing the sentence, we have to write a square bracket. In that, we write the number of the reference. That is, after the paper, after writing all the paper, we'll give some references. In those references, which reference is being copied here, that is to be given in square bracket. That comes under Vancouver style of citation. So these are the different styles of citations which avoids plagiarism when we are taking some others' work. So first thing is, why do you plagiarize? Why the plagiarism has come? There are some factors which are responsible for this kind of plagiarism. So the first factor is lack of English writing skills. If a person is a good researcher, he may have very good knowledge, but if he's not having the English writing skills, then he has to go for others' work and he'll check the others' work and how the sentence is framed there, and he'll take those sentences and he represent in his work and he claim it as his own work. Then that comes as a plagiarism. So lack of English knowledge or English writing skills is one of the factor which is making all the persons to go for plagiarism. Number two is lack of time and planning. The person doesn't have any time and there is no planning to write the paper, then they go for copying some other's work. The third one is lazy attitude. If the person is lazy, they are good at work, but lazy towards writing, then they go for copying others' work. Fourth one is lack of knowledge. They don't have the knowledge. They borrow the knowledge of some other's work and they claim it as their own knowledge. And that comes under plagiarism. Next one is due to competition. Nowadays, everyone is present in competitive world. So we have to compete with the other. And in order to gain promotions or all those things, we need to stand in some place. We have to upgrade ourselves. In order to upgrade ourselves in this competition, they don't have time or planning again, and they go for copying. That is also one of the reason for plagiarism. That is due to competition in the present society. Next one is pressure in career advancement. In order to get promotions or all those things, career advancement, there is pressure in them. In that pressure, they don't have any time to write the paper. Then they go for copying others' work. That is either publish or perish. Nowadays, it is the situation is publish or perish. The next one is no confidence on their own writing or knowledge. They have knowledge and they know how to write and they have English writing skills, but they don't have confidence how to write, or whether whatever I'm writing is either correct or not. They don't have any confidence on their own knowledge. They go for others, they search for other people's work and they try to copy from them. So all these are the factors which are making all the people to go for plagiarism. So next is 72%. You are seeing the slide here. After the study, they have found that 72% of students are cheating from for writing assignments. So if you give a small assignment to a school student also, he's not giving any time or if he's not giving any work to his brain to find out the answer for that. That's just they are opening and they're going for Google and just typing the question. Then everything is on that, and they're taking all the sources of internet and they're writing. For that is also one of the kind of cheating. That therefore 72% of students are admitted to serious cheating on writing assignments during their work. So you have included the words and ideas of others in your own work that you neglected to cite. Citation is very, very important when you write. So if you're neglecting or if you're not giving credit to that person, that you must have probably plagiarized. Now the types of plagiarism. What are the different types of plagiarisms? Broadly, we are having two types of plagiarisms. That is, one is intentional plagiarism. Number two is unintentional plagiarism. Intentional plagiarism is nothing but we intentionally copy the work of others and we represent it as our own work. Copying a friend's work, buying or borrowing papers, cutting and pasting blocks of text from electronic sources without documenting, media borrowing without documentation. All these intentionally we are doing that. So that comes under intentional type of plagiarism. Another one is unintentional work. That is, unintentional means careless paraphrasing. We are doing our paraphrasing. I'm doing some work. I have completed one work, and based on that work, I'm writing one article. I'm writing, and I don't know the same type of work has been given by some other person who is not here. Then unintentionally that is been matching with other person. That comes under unintentional or accidental plagiarism. That is, these are the two types of plagiarisms. Then we go for methods of plagiarism. What are the different methods? How the plagiarism is taking place? What are the difference of methods of plagiarism? In these methods of plagiarism, one is complete or global plagiarism. Complete or global plagiarism. That is, copying entire work and changing the words here and there and reporting it as their own work. That is called as complete or global plagiarism. They're not one or two sentences or one or two words. It is complete work is being copied and they change the words. Here, the word is, or that, or this, or they will be changing those words and they are again representing the same work as their own work. That comes under complete or global plagiarism. Next one is paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is nothing but replacing or copying a piece of text. That means not complete, one sentence or two sentences or two or three words. Then what they replace one of the sentence of others' work and they represent it in their own work and they show that it is their own work without again giving citation, without any giving credit to the author. This comes under paraphrasing. This kind of plagiarism is not easily coded by the software tools also. That is paraphrasing type of plagiarism. Next is verbatim. Verbatim is nothing but copy and paste. Verbatim is copy paste means we are taking the work of other author or other researcher, just we are copying from their work, the sentences or text and just copying it in our work and we are not giving any credit to that author. That is called as verbatim type of plagiarism. Next one is mosaic plagiarism. It is called patchwork. Mosaic is nothing but patchwork plagiarism. So in this kind of plagiarism, what is happening is I go for searching all the different sources of work which is done by different persons or researchers, which is similar to my work. Then I'll take all the ideas of all the different types of works which I have done, and I take all the ideas and put it together, and I'll make it as one text. And now I report it as my own work. That is called as mosaic type of plagiarism. So we are representing as one text which is being copied from different people or different works of different researchers. That is called as mosaic type of plagiarism. So mosaic type of plagiarism comes under intentional. All these comes under intentional type of plagiarisms only. Next one is self-plagiarism. Self-plagiarism is definitely academia dishonest, because when we are writing one publication, I'm writing one publication, for example, I have submitted it and I have got one credit for that. I have got 1 point or H index for that kind of publication. And next I'm going for second publication. I'm writing second publication. When I'm writing second publication, I'm using some of the text or sentences or some figures of the first publication. And again, I'm representing in the second publication. That comes under self-plagiarism. That means I'm using my own work, which has already been credited for me, and again reporting in the second publication. That comes under self-plagiarism. So this comes under academicianism. That according to UGC report, self-citation, this is called self-citation. That is, when I have taken the credit of first publication, how can I go for the next one which is having the same work or same type of text? I can't go for that. So it is offense. So this UGC reported that if any individual is going for self-plagiarism, that publication or that article will not be given individual citation. Means that will not increase our individual citation and H index also in global academic site. These articles are not considered for promotions or giving PhDs or even for selections. So this is one important notice or order which is given from UGC regarding this self-plagiarism. So if I'm writing more papers and we are copying the same paper, then that will not give points for us. It will not increase H index, because if anybody wants to cite for go for reference our paper, if all the papers are having same kind of work or same kind of thing, they don't go for citation, they don't go for reference, then we don't get any number, we don't get any citation index, or we don't get H index factor. So for that kind of papers also, they don't go for awarding PhD. See, four publications are needed, for example, for awarding PhD. 4 publications are having almost same type of work, then they don't go for awarding PhD. They don't go for selections, or they don't go for promotions also. So that is self-plagiarism. Next one is accidental plagiarism. Accidental plagiarism is similar to the type of plagiarism which we have, that is unintentional plagiarism. That is, unintentionally, if we write a text or idea which matches with already published work, then it is called as accidental plagiarism. So this accidental plagiarism does not play that much in the coding of the plagiarism software. So all these are the methods of plagiarism which we need to know before going for writing a publication or a thesis or a book or anything. Next is this is nothing but the types of the plagiarism in research. That is, secondary sources means we go for the others work, and invalid source and duplication means we do the same kind of work and again publishing it. Paraphrasing is nothing but we are taking a sentence and we are coding it. And repetitive research work means we are again repeating the same type of research work, replication of the research work, and misleading attribution, and unethical collaboration, and verbatim plagiarism, complete plagiarism, or global plagiarism. All these are the different types of plagiarisms which we see during our research. The consequences of this plagiarism is very risky, and it is an unethical behavior. So in order to avoid this kind of plagiarism, before that is how to avoid this plagiarism. So to avoid this plagiarism, I told already that is citation is very important. We have to quote and cite phrases, sentences, or paragraphs taken directly from original source. Quote and cite statistics, charts, graphs, and drawings taken directly from original source, other sources. When you paraphrase or summarize, give credit to the original author by citing them. And one more important thing is we have to understand, everyone has to understand plagiarism, what are the methods of plagiarism which are possible, so that we take care while writing the publications or theses or anything, so that that kind of plagiarisms are not coming into our writing. So first thing is understanding plagiarism is also one of the steps to take to avoid plagiarism. Number 2 is we have to start early and write our own idea. Or suppose after 6 months I want to publish one paper, I have to start now itself to start writing that paper and take all the steps to avoid all kinds of difficulties. And I have to write all the ideas I have to put in our own words. Then I can publish after 6 months. That is too early. We have to start early, and we have to put our work on the paper, so that this will avoid plagiarism. Hurriedly, if you are writing the paper, definitely it goes into copying of others, and then it comes under plagiarism. Next one is proper citation is very, very important. Citation has to be done to avoid this plagiarism. Which author is which reference is taken, who is that author of the reference, that definitely we have to give credit to that person who from whom we are taking that sentence or text or table or figures. Then paraphrase properly. Paraphrasing or sentence formation is also very important in case of writing the publications. And present your own work. That is, we have to present our own work, not others' work. Others' knowledge. We cannot steal others' knowledge. If anybody is taking your money, you can't see. You can't see and stand, and you will not shut up without saying that he's taking my money. You'll go and complain it in the police station, and law will take care of that person, whether of that thief. And similarly, to avoid plagiarism, you are taking or you are stealing some other's knowledge, some other's information. So in order to avoid this, there is also a check for this plagiarism. That is, we are having some tools to check the plagiarism. The tools which we have in plagiarism are free tools are there, That is, we can check plagiarism by using free tools, which are software tools. And also we have paid software tools. That is, free software tools are like Dupli Checker, Copy Leaks, Paper Rater, Plagiarism Checker, and Urkund. Among all these free checkers, we can use Urkund as a recommended free software to check our plagiarism. But one problem with the free plagiarism checker is when we are giving our publication and for software to check the plagiarism, the data security is very important. It stores the data inside the software when we are going for free softwares. So when you go for the other work which is having some sentences or some text which is similar, then it gives 100% plagiarism when you go for the next work also. So among the free softwares, Urkund is the recommended software for plagiarism check. Coming to the paid softwares, Turnitin is a very important and effective tool, which is a paid software for checking the plagiarism. In addition to this Turnitin, Authenticate, Blackboard, Grammarly, Plagiarism Detection, and Quotex, Scribber, Bibme, all these are there, which are paid software tools. But if you, other than Turnitin, these are very costly, and we have to go for license. We have to take license for all these. But if you take license also, Turnitin is somewhat less cost and more effective tool for detecting this plagiarism. And if the plagiarism is checked, we have different levels. After checking the plagiarism, we have some penalties also which is given to them. If after checking the plagiarism either by Turnitin or Urkund, it is, if the similarities are up to 10%, it comes under level 0. That is, minor similarities are present, therefore no penalty for that kind of plagiarism. Level 1 is similarities above 10% to 40%. Then such students shall be asked to submit a revised script within a stipulated time period, not exceeding that. If the similarities is above 40 to 60%, it comes under level 2. Such students shall be debarred from submitting a revised script for a period of 1 year. Level 3 is nothing but similarities above 60%. More than 50% is there means such student registration for that program shall be cancelled. So these are the penalties which are given for thesis and dissertations. And if you are writing academic and research publications, if above 10 to 40%, above up to 10% is level 0, no penalty for that. And similarities above 10 to 40% shall be asked to withdraw manuscript here. The manuscript itself is withdrawn. And similarities above 40 to 60%, it comes under level 2. Shall be asked to withdraw manuscript, shall be they need to write to 1 annual increment, and shall be allowed to be a supervisor for a period of 2 years. Shall not be allowed to be a supervisor for a period of 2 years. If more than 60%, it is level 3. Shall be asked to withdraw manuscript, shall be denied to write to some successive annual increments, and shall not be allowed to be a supervisor for a period of 2 years. So such kind of penalties are there for this plagiarism is checked with the different levels. So most of the state universities, however, implemented the regulations. UGC reserves the right to remove difficulty or difficulties in the course of implementations of these regulations. So this allowed plagiarism is state universities are allowing 10 to 15% of plagiarism is allowed. That is by using Urkund, that is free software. And NITs and IITs are allowed up to 22 or 25% of software because they are using Turnitin software. Turnitin software is exact effective tool because if it checks up to the alphabetical order also. If suppose 5th word is detected as plagiarized, then all the 5 words in that sentence will be counted as plagiarized. Then it counts like that. Therefore, NITs and IITs are giving 20 to 25% of exception for plagiarism. So when you are giving a paper, for plagiarism check, then how do you identify that paper? That is, how it identifies means by giving colors. That is, if there is no matching of others' work, then it is represented by blue, uplining. That is, it highlights the sentences with blue color, that there is no matching in this. If it is 1 to 24% similarity index is present, that will be highlighted by green color. If 25% to 49% similarity index is present, it shows by highlighting with yellow color. And 50 to 74% similarity index is present, it shows by orange highlighting. And red means almost that is global, that comes under global plagiarism. So all similarity, complete copied work. So sometimes what happens here is, in this softwares, the number of the reference is also given from which it is copied using this software of Turnitin. That is, suppose one sentence is there, that is being copied from some other reference. What reference is given at the end of the paper, that reference number will be given on that by highlighting that the sentence that it is being copied, and the number of the reference will also be given from which it is copied. So that is the effectiveness of the tool of Turnitin to explain the plagiarism. How much plagiarism? So after completing all the plagiarism, at the end of the paper, they give the percentage. Well, how much percentage is present in this, plagiarism is present in this at the end of the paper. That shows whether we have to go for writing my manuscript again, or how much percentage is present. Depending on that, what we have to do, that is being finalized. So what is the features of this is, if we don't have any plagiarism, it is easy to submit our papers, articles, books and chapters and thesis, etc. And we get source of matching the contents. Which is the source of matching? What are the different sources which are matched here, and how to avoid that? We know very clearly after plagiarism check is over. Instant receipt of submission. That means if there is no plagiarism at all, then we get it is ready to submit the thesis. Feedback through some interface. So we'll get some feedback through that plagiarism check. Useful for checking referencing before submission. That is, whenever we are going for submitting any article or thesis or book, we have to check and check and check, so that whether we are giving reference to the sentences or text which we have taken or not. Different types of citations are given or not. Quoting is present or not. After rechecking only, we have to go for plagiarism, and then we have to go for submitting our papers or theses or plagiarisms. So with this small brief report regarding this plagiarism, I conclude my topic. Thank you everyone for having patience and listening to me. Thank you. Hello. Hello.
Director.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I thank all the organizers of this event for giving me this opportunity to talk a few words regarding plagiarism. Thank you.
Madam, you can stop the share. You can stop the share. Thank you, madam. It was very nice on the plagiarism, and you have also highlighted what is actually plagiarism and how to avoid this, because this is one of the most important points, especially when we are submitting the thesis or submitting the paper. It was a very fruitful talk, madam. Thank you very much. This is the end of our 4 speakers who have talked today. I request Suma madam to propose vote of thanks. And before that, the feedback form will be submitted to you in your research groups. So you have to fill up the feedback form, and then this is only for the research scholars, not for the research supervisors. Your feedback form, once you fill it up, your certificate, you will get your certificate. Please give us a day or two for the certificate to be downloaded, because every day 100 certificates only get downloaded. So over to you, Suma.
So, Chancellor Sir, Vice Chancellor Sir, Co-Chairpersons, Registrar Sir, OSD, Deans, Directors, Heads of the Departments, most valued invited guests, and the scholar participants. It's my pleasure to have been asked to propose vote of thanks on this occasion. Ma'am, am I audible?
It's clear.
Anuradha, madam?
Yeah, it's clear.
Yeah, okay. So, on behalf of Chaitanya Deemed to be University and the entire fraternity, and on my own behalf, extend a heartfelt vote of thanks to all the speakers for spending time and sharing with us your findings and opinions today. I expressed my deep sense of appreciation to Professor Damodar Sir, Vice Chancellor of our university, for his excellent talk on principles of good writing. Thank you, sir. We would also like to acknowledge our gratitude to Tapasya ma'am for her wonderful, enlightening talk on research ethics. Ma'am, we would definitely take all the suggestions, follow ethics, good scientific conduct, and the ground rules, and see that there are no boundaries between departments to bring out fruitful results. Now, I take the opportunity to thank Dr. Mukesh, as said, the proudest alumni of Chaitanya, for his outstanding and magnificent talk on research paper writing. Dr. Mukesh contributed to research at Chaitanya is worth acknowledging. I think all the life science scholars and those who have submitted PhD know what is the importance of Mukesh's research at Chaitanya. Thank you, Dr. Mukesh. And I'm also very happy to share that our first international publication was myself and Mukesh's. And my sincere thanks to Professor Kavita, Head Department of Chemistry and Director of PG Programs, Chaitanya Deemed to be University, for an excellent coverage on plagiarism. And I also acknowledge my special thanks to Professor M.V. Rajam for always supporting us in events like this. Well, an event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels start rolling weeks ago. It requires a lot of planning. We are fortunate enough to be backed by most dynamic co-chairpersons, Mr. Vikram Reddy and Dr. Satvika, for their constant encouragement, involvement, and support in making this event a grand success. And I deeply acknowledge my special thanks to our Director Research, Professor Christopher Rubin, and Dean Sciences, Professor Anuradha Madam, for their dynamic role in organizing this orientation program for the research scholars. Last but not the least, I extend my heartfelt thanks to Mr. Aravind for the flyer and his technical support. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumam. That was very kind of you. I request all the scholars to please give your feedback on the link that has been provided in your research group, and your certificates, you will get it to your mail. Thank you. We'll again meet in another webinar, which we will try to plan out in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.